Deep in the quiet woods and rolling hills of Connecticut, where narrow colonial roads twist between ancient stone walls and centuries-old trees, stand mansions older than the country itself. On sunny days, these colonial homes look charming, peaceful, even nostalgic. But when night falls, their twisted histories awaken. The floors groan beneath unseen footsteps. Candles flicker in rooms long abandoned. Cold drafts glide down the hallways like icy fingers searching for warmth. And the air itself seems to grow heavier. As though the walls remember every whisper, every argument, every tragedy that ever took place. Generations lived and died within these mansions. Some of them rest peacefully. Others do not. Visitors have reported hearing soft voices drifting from locked attic doors. Some saw pale hands gripping the banisters of grand staircases. A few witnessed shadowy figures slipping into fireplaces that have not burned in over 100 years. And several swear they felt eyes watching them from upstairs windows even though the second floor collapsed decades ago. Tonight, my dear friend, we walk the colonial paths of Connecticut, paths lit by moonlight, paths haunted by stories carved deep into wood, stone, and memory. We step inside these mansions one by one, breathing in the scent of old earth, old stories, and old spirits. So let me ask you. If you were walking past a colonial mansion late at night, and a candle suddenly lit itself in the upstairs window, would you step closer to see who was inside, or would you hurry away before the shutters creaked open on their own? Hello, my dear friend. I am so grateful you joined me tonight. Safe wherever you are. Because the journey before us is filled with creaking floors, whispering hallways, and memories that cling to the air like lingering smoke. Connecticut's colonial mansions are some of the oldest homes in America. Built by hands that shaped the early foundations of a nation. Homes filled with celebrations, arguments, secrets, and sorrows. Homes where generations lived full lives. And some never truly left. The architecture alone carries weight, massive hearths still darkened by centuries of soot. Narrow staircases lit only by moonlight. Arched ceilings that echo every sound. And bedrooms where time feels strangely distorted. Visitors have described waking in the night to the sound of someone pacing above them. Even when the roof was the only thing overhead. Others heard piano keys playing soft colonial melodies. Even though the piano itself was missing several keys. There are accounts of shadows appearing along the walls that stretch taller and taller. Until they reach the ceiling. Portraits change expression when no one is looking. Curtains sway even when the air is still. And footsteps wander the halls long after midnight, slow, measured, deliberate. Before we step deeper into these haunted mansions of Connecticut, I want to ask you something. And I hope you will share your answer in the comments. If you were exploring a colonial mansion at dusk, and you suddenly heard a soft knock coming from inside a locked bedroom. A bedroom untouched for over a century. Would you open the door? Or would you walk away and pretend you heard nothing? Take a deep breath. And follow me. Into the oldest, most haunted colonial mansions in Connecticut. Old Hearthstone Manor rises from a quiet stretch of countryside, surrounded by rolling fields and dense clusters of oak trees that sway gently in the wind. Built from heavy stone blocks, the manor has weathered decades of storms, sunlight, and drifting seasons. Its architecture is sturdy and dignified, shaped by generations that once relied on its warmth and protection. But of all its features, none are as well known as the massive fireplace that dominates the grand hall. The hearth stands taller than a person, built from dark stone polished smooth by age and memory. Visitors stepping into the grand hall immediately feel drawn toward the fireplace. Its presence commands the room with silent authority. Though no fire burns within it, the hearth holds an energy that feels warm despite its cold stone. The floorboards around it creak softly underfoot, and shadows pool near the edges of the room as if gathering in quiet reverence. Even without flames, the hearth radiates a sense of history, as though it remembers every fire that once crackled within its walls. Late at night, when the manor settles into stillness, visitors often hear the unmistakable sound of crackling flames. The noise drifts through the halls, faint at first, then growing clearer as one approaches the grand fireplace. The sound resembles wood popping and embers shifting, echoing with a warmth that feels almost tangible. But when travelers shine their lanterns into the hearth, they find only cold ash and soot. There are no glowing coals, no burning logs, nothing to explain the persistent sound of fire. Some claim the crackling is so convincing that they can feel heat rising from the hearth, warming their faces and hands even though no actual warmth exists. This phantom heat fades instantly when they step away, leaving them with a lingering chill that follows them through the manor. Others describe the crackling as more rhythmic, almost gentle, like the sound of a fire tended by careful hands. It soothes some visitors and unsettles others, depending on how they interpret the strange illusion. Over the years, travelers have reported seeing a shadowy figure kneeling before the hearth. The figure appears faint, more a suggestion of form than a physical presence. It rests with its hands extended toward the empty fireplace, as though warming itself by flames that no longer burn. Some viewers describe the shadow as stooped or weary, its posture conveying a quiet yearning for comfort. The figure does not move or turn. It simply remains there, shaped by the flickering glow of an unseen fire. This apparition never appears when the room is brightly lit. It only emerges in dim lantern light or when the moon shines through the tall windows at just the right angle. When travelers attempt to approach, the shadow dissolves into the floor, fading into the cracks between the stones. The moment it vanishes, the phantom crackling stops, leaving the hall silent once more. For many, the disappearance feels abrupt, like a moment cut short before its meaning could be understood. The manor's history offers partial clues. According to old records, Hearthstone Manor belonged to a family who prized their fireplace as the heart of the home. It served as a gathering place during winter storms, a source of warmth in long dark months, and a symbol of unity for all who lived within its walls. The head of the household was known to spend long evenings tending the fire, ensuring it never went out. He believed a warm hearth welcomed good fortune and kept misfortune at bay. Some say he passed away in front of the fireplace. Others claim he continued tending the fire until his final breath, unwilling to let the flames die even as the cold crept through the manor. Whether these tales are entirely true remains uncertain. But the presence that lingers near the hearth suggests a story deeply rooted in devotion to warmth and protection. Visitors exploring other rooms of the manor often feel subtle reminders of the hearth's influence. In the dining room, they sense drafts that carry the faint scent of charred wood. In upstairs bedrooms, they hear distant popping sounds late at night, echoing through the floorboards as if the fire below is alive and restless. Some travelers wake in the middle of the night with the feeling of warmth on their hands or faces, only to find the room cold and the windows frosted. The manor itself exudes a sense of quiet companionship rather than menace. Though its ghostly sounds and shifting shadows may unsettle some, many visitors describe the atmosphere as gentle, as if the lingering presence seeks comfort as much as they do. The sound of phantom flames feels less like a warning and more like a memory replayed over and over by the walls themselves. One explorer described sitting in the grand hall after midnight, listening to the crackling of the invisible fire. As he watched the hearth, he saw the faint outline of the shadow figure kneeling once again. Instead of fear, he felt a strange sense of peace, as though witnessing a moment preserved from long ago. He remained still, unwilling to disturb the scene. When the shadow finally faded, the crackling softened into silence, leaving the hall calm and still. Another traveler recounted approaching the fireplace after hearing loud popping noises echo through the manor. As she reached the hearth, she felt warmth brush against her cheeks, a sensation so real she stepped back in surprise. The warmth vanished instantly, replaced by a cold draft that swept through the room. Moments later, the shadow appeared, kneeling exactly where she had stood. She watched in stillness as the figure lingered, its form illuminated by the soft glow of a non-existent fire. When it vanished, the air grew still, and the house returned to silence. Old Hearthstone Manor remains one of the Region A's most intriguing historical sites. People visit to witness the grandeur of its architecture, the timeless stonework, and the atmosphere shaped by years of stories whispered through its halls. Yet the fireplace continues to draw the most attention. It stands as a quiet monument to memory, warmth, and the possibility that devotion endures long after physical presence fades. Visitors leave the manor with impressions that linger. They recall the sound of crackling flames that never burned, the warmth that touched them briefly, and the solitary shadow kneeling before the hearth, with hands extended toward light that no longer exists. And the spirit of the hearth continues to warm the darkness, long after the fire has gone out. A place where history breathes softly through stone, where echoes of comfort survive in silence, and where the spirit of the hearth continues to warm the darkness, long after the fire has gone out. Willowmark Estate stands at the edge of an old countryside, surrounded by rolling fields and a quiet pond that reflects the sky with glassy precision. The estate's grand structure rises above the land. With weathered charm, its stone walls marked by the passing of countless seasons. Tall willow trees encircle the property, their long branches sweeping low enough to brush against the house itself. These trees have grown alongside the estate for generations, their roots deep, and their presence unmistakable. During the day, the willows sway gently in the wind, their cascading leaves whispering softly as they move. The sunlight filters through the branches in delicate patterns, casting shifting shadows across the estate grounds. The atmosphere feels serene beneath the canopy, the rustling leaves creating a natural rhythm that accompanies the hum of insects and the distant call of birds. The estate's windows catch glimmers of this light, reflecting hints of green and silver from the swaying branches outside. As evening settles in, however, the tone of Willowmark Estate changes. The sun slips below the horizon, and the movement of the willow trees becomes more pronounced. Their branches lean into the wind, tapping gently against the walls of the estate. The pattern is unmistakable, soft yet deliberate. For those inside the house, it feels as though the trees are reaching out, seeking attention from anyone still awake. Visitors who stay overnight often find themselves listening for these gentle knocks. Others experience a deeper unease, feeling that the trees seem too close, their presence too purposeful. The knocking continues in intervals, paused only when the wind shifts direction before returning again with renewed focus. The sound resonates through the rooms, echoing faintly down the hallways and across the wooden floors. It is during these nighttime hours that the most mysterious reports emerge. Some claim that when the windows are left open on windy nights, the trees whisper names of former residents into the drifting air. These whispers blend seamlessly with the rustling leaves, nearly indistinguishable from natural sounds. Yet those who listen carefully insist they can hear names spoken softly, carried from branch to branch before drifting inside. The names vary from night to night, but all match records of people who once lived at Willowmark Estate. The names vary from night to night, but all match records of people who once lived at Willowmark Estate. Visitors who have heard these whispers describe them as faint and breathlike, arriving in fragments rather than complete phrases. The names seem to emerge from the natural rhythm of the wind, as though the trees themselves speak through the motion of their branches. For some, these whispers evoke a sense of nostalgia. For others, they inspire a chill that deepens with each repeated name. While no one has been able to record these voices with absolute clarity, the accounts remain consistent across generations of guests. Inside the estate, the atmosphere carries its own unique stillness. The rooms are furnished with antique pieces preserved from earlier eras, their dark wood polished to a warm sheen. The floors creak gently beneath each step. And the air holds a faint scent of aged books, dried herbs, and lingering candle wax. At night, when the knocking of the willow branches echoes against the walls, the interior seems to hold its breath. Shadows grow longer, stretching across the rooms like elongated fingers reaching toward the windows. The windows themselves frame the willow trees in a striking silhouette. Under moonlight, the branches appear silver, moving in slow waves as though guided by unseen hands. The open windows allow the soft breeze to drift in, carrying the earthy scent of willow bark and damp soil. In this dim glow, some visitors say they have seen shapes move among the trees, thin outlines that resemble figures walking between the trunks. These shapes keep their distance, blending with the canopy in a way that suggests they may be illusions of light and shadow. Yet the sightings persist. The history of Willowmark Estate is filled with stories that deepen the mystery. Built in the early 18th century, the estate has passed through numerous families, each leaving behind a legacy of tales involving the willow trees. Some speak of the original owner planting them intentionally to form a protective ring around the property. Others recount stories of family members who spent long hours sitting beneath the branches, seeking comfort or inspiration from their gentle sway. Over time, the willows became an integral part of the estate's identity, their presence entwined with its stories and traditions. Yet certain legends suggest a more haunting connection. Some say the willows respond to the emotions of the estate's residents, knocking softly against the walls during times of grief or change. Others believe the trees hold memories within their branches, repeating whispers from the past for those who choose to listen. These tales have no official documentation to support them, but local communities continue to share them as part of the estate's enduring charm. Visitors who explore the grounds at night often feel drawn toward the willows. The branches seem to create pathways that invite curiosity, forming arches that sway gently above the narrow trails. The deeper one walks into the grove, the quieter the world becomes. Even the steady movement of the wind grows muted beneath the thick canopy. In this stillness, some travelers report hearing faint whispers even when they stand far from the house, as though the trees themselves communicate with one another through rhythmic movements. When dawn approaches, the atmosphere begins to shift again. The rhythm of the knocking fades as the wind calms, and the soft light of morning filters through the willow branches. The air warms slightly, and the estate returns to its tranquil daytime presence. Any whispers heard in the night linger only as fragile memories, fading with the rising sun. The shapes between the trees vanish entirely, replaced by ordinary shadows cast by the shifting branches. Yet the impression of the night remains with those who stay. The knocking branches, the whispered names, and the shifting silhouettes combine to create an experience that feels deeply rooted in the estate's history. Willowmark stands not only as a grand structure of stone and timber, but as a living part of the landscape, shaped by the willows that surround it. Willowmark Estate continues to draw visitors who seek its beauty and its mystery. Whether one believes the trees hold memories of the past or simply dance with the wind in ways that inspire the imagination, there is no denying the unique atmosphere created by their presence. The gentle knocking, the drifting whispers, and the graceful sway of the branches form a story that unfolds each night, offering a glimpse into a world where nature and memory intertwine beneath the moonlit sky. Bramblegate Colonial House. At the edge of a quiet countryside road, where tall grasses sway against weathered fences and the air carries the scent of old earth, stands a forgotten structure known as Bramblegate Colonial House. Built centuries ago, its frame rises from the ground like a silent monument to the past, its wooden beams faded by years of sun, rain, and restless winds. The entire exterior is wrapped in thick vines that curl across the walls and climb the eaves, gripping the structure as though the house itself is being slowly reclaimed by nature. From a distance, the vines give the impression that the house is wearing a cloak woven from living bramble, heavy and unmoving. Approaching the house, travelers notice how dense the vegetation has become. The vines twist around the railings, lace across the windows, and stretch in long clusters along the roofline. Leaves obscure much of the original architecture, allowing only small glimpses of the wooden siding beneath. Despite its age and overgrowth, the house remains remarkably intact. Its shape stands firm, resisting the weight of time in a way that feels almost deliberate. Some visitors believe the vines protect the house, shielding it from further decay. Others feel an eerie tension in the air, as though the vines hold the house captive. The front door, though warped by age, opens with surprising ease. Inside, the air is cool and still, carrying faint traces of dust, wood, and something indistinct but familiar, like the remnants of an old memory. Sunlight filters through cracks in the vines that press against the windows, breaking into fragmented beams that drift across the floor. The interior of the house reveals long hallways, tall door frames, and narrow staircases that creak softly beneath each step. Worn wallpaper curls at the edges, revealing older layers beneath. Every detail feels frozen in time, preserved yet slightly bent by the weight of years. From the moment visitors step inside, footsteps echo in every hallway. The footsteps are not always synchronous with the movements of those exploring the house. Sometimes the echoes appear to follow directly behind a traveler, matching their pace in perfect rhythm. Other times, the footsteps drift ahead, guiding travelers deeper into the house as though leading them to a specific room. The sound is clear enough to distinguish the light patter of small steps and the steady cadence of heavier ones. Despite the clarity, no visible source ever appears. These echoes resonate through the walls at unpredictable intervals. A visitor might pause at a doorway only to hear footsteps coming toward them from the opposite end of the hall, growing louder before fading into silence without ever crossing the final stretch of floor. In certain rooms, the sound seems to circle the space, moving along the perimeter as though pacing. The echoes never feel aggressive, but they carry an undeniable presence, as if repeating the patterns of people who once lived here. The house seems to remember their movements, replaying them through its hollow corridors. Amid the soft echoes, visitors often sense something else. Travelers often feel someone tugging gently at their sleeves. The tug is subtle, barely enough to shift the fabric, yet it is unmistakable. It feels like the touch of a small hand or the careful grip of someone trying to catch attention without startling. These moments happen without warning. A person might be examining an old picture frame on the wall when they feel the light pull. Others feel it near the staircase, just before they ascend or descend. Some describe the tug as hesitant, almost timid, while others feel it with surprising precision, as if guiding them away from certain areas. Many who have experienced the gentle tug believe it comes from a presence that once lived in the house. The sensation feels too controlled to be an accidental brush of fabric or a draft catching loose clothing. It feels intentional, conscious, like a request for acknowledgement. Some visitors report feeling a wave of emotion accompany the touch, something akin to curiosity, longing, or a desire to communicate. The experience leaves them momentarily speechless, surrounded by the silent walls that seem to breathe with memories. The house's interior architecture adds. Narrow hallways twist in unusual angles, creating corners where shadows linger long after sunlight fades. Tall windows, veiled by vines, allow only slivers of light to enter, casting thin, pale beams that stretch across the wooden floors. In some rooms, old furniture remains, covered in dust yet arranged neatly, as though someone simply stepped away for a moment. These details create the impression that the house is caught between its past and present, suspended in a quiet limbo. Local stories about Bramblegate Colonial House describe a family that lived there many generations ago. Records suggest a household of several children, their laughter once filling the halls. Some believe the gentle tugs on sleeves are remnants of their presence, reaching out with the same innocent curiosity they had in life. The footsteps, too, are often attributed to these lingering echoes, the house replaying their daily routines long after they disappeared from the world. However, these are only stories, passed down through word of mouth, with no definitive proof to confirm or deny them. Researchers who have studied the structure offer more grounded explanations. They argue that shifting boards and settling foundations can produce sounds that mimic footsteps, especially in old houses with hollow floors. They suggest the tugging sensation may be caused by static electricity, loose vines brushing against windows, or air movement created by changes in temperature. While these theories explain certain aspects of the experience, they do not account for the consistency with which visitors report the same sensations, nor do they explain the delicate precision of the sleeve tugs. Explorers often find themselves returning to the same hallway, the one where the echoes are strongest. The walls in this section curve slightly, and the vines outside press tightly against the window frames. The light here is dim but steady, casting long, rippling shadows that sway gently as if moved by unseen forces. It is in this hallway that the footsteps become clearest and the sleeve tugs most frequent. Some believe the hallway holds the heart of the house, a place where its memories concentrate and linger. The sensation of being guided grows stronger the longer one remains inside. Travelers report moments where the air seems to pulse softly, directing them toward a particular doorway or away from another. These subtle influences never feel aggressive, but they carry a sense of caution or quiet invitation. Some visitors follow these impressions, discovering rooms they might have otherwise overlooked. Others choose not to follow, unsettled by the feeling of being steered by something unseen. Outside, the vines sway gently in the wind, as though mimicking the movements within the house. The thick vegetation wraps around the structure like a protective barrier, sealing the past within its embrace. Yet the echoes inside continue to fill the hallways, soft footsteps pacing through memories held deep in the wooden frame. The gentle tugs on sleeves linger as reminders that something remains aware, curious, and quietly present. Bramblegate Colonial House endures as a place where the past breathes through every corridor, where footsteps echo without bodies, and where unseen hands tug lightly at those who wander too close. Whether shaped by memory, legend, or forces unmeasured, the house offers an experience that is both mysterious and deeply human. Travelers leave with a sense of having brushed against something old and searching, something that lingers within the vine-covered walls, waiting patiently for the next visitor to step inside. White Lantern Residence stands at the edge of an old rural road where the forest grows thick, and the nights seem longer than anywhere else. The house itself is small, built in a style common to remote homesteads of a past century. Its wooden boards are weathered to a pale gray, and its porch stretches across the front like an open invitation to a place that has not changed in decades. Though the windows are dark, and no one is known to live inside, the house gives the impression that it is waiting for someone. On the front porch, a single lantern hangs from a rusted metal hook. The lantern is old, its white paint chipped away in places, its glass scratched and fogged. According to local accounts, the lantern once burned brightly when the residence was occupied by its last known owner, an elderly woman who lived alone and rarely spoke to visitors. When she passed away many years ago, the lantern was left behind with no fuel inside, the wick dry, the reservoir empty. Yet each night, the lantern glows faintly. The light is subtle, a pale shimmer that no flame should be able to produce. It pulses softly, growing brighter in moments before dimming again, creating the illusion of slow breathing. No physical heat radiates from it. Those who approach often describe the light as otherworldly, neither warm nor cold, simply present. The glow remains steady through rain, fog, and snow, unaffected by wind or weather. Even when storms lash the forest with violent gusts, the lantern hangs still, its faint aura untouched. Visitors swear they see a figure rocking in the porch chair. The chair is old, made of creaking wood that still moves with the slightest touch. During the day, the chair remains empty, its surface worn smooth by time. But at night, when the lantern begins its subtle glow, some travelers walking the road claim to see a silhouette seated in the rocking chair. The figure appears motionless at first, then begins to rock gently back and forth, matching the rhythm of the lanterna's dim pulse. The descriptions of the figure vary, though all agree it is thin, with a posture that speaks of age or weariness. Some say the figure appears wrapped in a shawl. Others see a long dress draped over the chair's edges. No one has ever seen a face. The head remains bowed, the chin resting slightly toward the chest, as though the figure is lost in thought or listening to something distant. A few claim the silhouette disappears the moment they approach the porch, vanishing so completely that the chair's motion stops instantly. These sightings have given rise to countless stories about the house's former occupant. Some believe the lantern glow and the figure are her lingering presence, watching over the home she once loved. Others speculate that the light serves as a beacon for something unseen, guiding travelers or marking the boundary between this world and another. Whatever the explanation, the phenomenon persists, unaffected by time or human intervention. The surrounding area contributes to the house's unsettling atmosphere. Tall trees encircle the property, their branches forming a natural barrier that blocks most moonlight. The forest floor is thick with fallen leaves, and the path leading to the house is overgrown. At night, the rustling of animals blends with the distant call of the wind, creating sounds that echo unevenly through the darkness. Many describe the environment as unusually quiet, as though the forest itself listens to the lanterna's hum. Visitors who gather the courage to step onto the porch experience a series of strange sensations. Some feel a sudden heaviness in the air, a subtle pressure that settles around their shoulders. Others describe a faint vibration beneath their feet, like the slow, steady rhythm of rocking. A few have felt the wooden boards shift slightly, though no visible force moves them. The closer one stands to the lantern, the more the environment seems to react, as if acknowledging their presence. There are stories of travelers who touched the lanterna's glass, expecting it to be cold. Instead, they felt a warmth that was soft and steady, not like the heat of a flame, but more like the warmth of a hand. The sensation fades instantly when they pull away, leaving them with the unsettling impression that the lantern responded to their touch. Some claim they heard faint whispers the moment they began to walk back down the porch steps, though no clear words formed in the air. The rocking chair itself is a focal point of many accounts. One explorer described seeing it moving gently as he approached the house. When he reached the bottom of the steps, the motion slowed, then stopped entirely. Another visitor said that when he stepped onto the porch, the chair rocked backward once, as though pushed by an unseen force. He immediately left, sensing he had interrupted something he was not meant to witness. Despite these unnerving experiences, White Lantern residence holds a strange beauty. The soft glow of the lantern paints the old wood in hues of silver and pale gold. Fireflies often drift near the edges of the yard, reflecting the lanterna's dim light. The forest, though imposing, offers a sense of shelter around the house, creating a world separate from the road beyond. For some, the residence feels peaceful, even comforting, as if the presence on the porch watches over travelers with quiet concern. For others, the mystery is far from comforting. The glow of a lantern with no flame. The rocking of a chair with no occupant. These elements create an atmosphere that blends sorrow, memory, and the uncanny. The house feels suspended in time, lingering in a state that defies explanation. Some believe the lantern marks unfinished business or a promise never fulfilled. Others think it is a symbol of protection, a guiding light for anyone lost in the night. There are even those who feel it is a warning to stay away, though they cannot explain why. Whatever truth lies behind the glow of the lantern and the presence in the rocking chair. White Lantern residence endures as a place where the veil between life and memory wears thin. The porch remains quiet during the day. And each night, as darkness envelopes the forest, the faint glow returns, illuminating the seat beside it, where a figure may or may not be watching. For travelers passing by, the house becomes a moment suspended in the quiet of the night. A lantern glowing without flame. A chair rocking with unseen presence. And a lingering feeling that someone sits upon the porch, keeping vigil over the shadows. Ironford Colonial Mansion stands atop a wide expanse of sloping land, surrounded by ancient trees whose branches stretch overhead like watchful guardians. Built in an era when craftsmanship meant endurance and detail, the mansion rises with strong timber beams, tall windows, and a commanding presence that can be felt even before one steps through its front doors. The structure has been restored many times over the generations, yet it preserves an atmosphere shaped by the countless lives that once passed through its halls. Inside, the air carries the scent of polished wood, old books, and faint traces of dust that linger in corners untouched by sunlight. The grand foyer opens into a large central staircase, an imposing feature crafted from dark oak. The banister curves gracefully upward, and the steps stretch toward the second floor like a pathway into another time. But what draws most visitors is not the beauty of the staircase. It is the sound it makes. The staircase groans non-stop. Even when no one climbs it, the wood creaks and shifts as though weighted by footsteps unseen. The groaning varies in pitch and volume. Sometimes the steps emit long, slow creaks that echo through the foyer like tired breaths. Other times, the sound resembles rapid footfalls racing upward or downward, though no figure appears on the stairs. Guests often pause at the bottom, staring up into the dimness, expecting someone to turn the corner and descend. But the staircase remains empty, the groaning continuing on its own. Some visitors liken the sound to the house stretching after centuries of stillness. Others believe the staircase remembers every footstep it has ever carried, repeating the motions long after those footsteps have faded from the world. Late at night, the groaning becomes more pronounced. Travelers lying awake in upstairs bedrooms hear the steady rhythm of steps moving through the mansion, as though the house itself refuses to sleep. The second most unsettling feature of Ironford Colonial Mansion is these portraits depict former residents, each painted with the precise, serious expression common in older styles of portraiture. The frames are ornate, carved from walnut and polished to a deep sheen. The eyes of the subjects seem lifelike, detailed with such care that they appear to gleam subtly in low light. Visitors walking the hallway often feel as though the eyes of the portraits follow them. As they move from one end to the other, they sense a steady gaze tracking their progress. Some guests test this by stepping forward cautiously, turning quickly, or stopping abruptly. No matter their pace or direction, the sensation persists. The painted eyes hold their focus with uncanny consistency. Lantern light accentuates this effect. The glow catches the glass covering each portrait, creating reflections that dance across the eyes. And make them appear almost animate. At times, visitors see subtle shifts in expression, perhaps the faint lifting of an eyebrow or the softening of a stern gaze. They blink, look again, and find the portrait unchanged. Yet the feeling remains, lingering like a whisper at the edge of perception. The mansion's long history contributes to its mysterious atmosphere. Built in the early colonial period, it served as both a family home and a gathering place for the surrounding settlement. Many residents passed through its rooms over the decades. Some lived entire lifetimes beneath its roof. Others visited briefly, leaving impressions etched into the walls and floorboards that seemed to echo through time. The staircase, worn by countless steps, seems to replay those movements. The portraits, left behind by those who once shaped the mansion's identity, seem to observe the present with watchful familiarity. In the dining room, the floorboards creak softly when no one stands upon them. Doors shift slightly in their hinges even when the air is still. Drafts move through hallways without any open windows. The mansion feels restless, not hostile but alive with the memory of activity. Guests often describe the experience as walking through a living archive, each sound and shadow a reflection of something that once occurred within these walls. One traveler described sitting in the foyer late at night, convinced someone was moving up and down the staircase. The groaning began softly, then grew louder until it resembled a hurried ascent. He watched as the steps creaked one after another, as though a figure sprinted upward. When the sound reached the landing, it stopped abruptly. The hallway above remained empty. The house fell silent. Moments later, the groaning resumed, this time descending slowly, each creak heavy and deliberate. Yet again, no one appeared. Another visitor recounted walking through the portrait hall when she felt compelled to stop. A particular painting of a woman in formal attire seemed to capture her attention. The woman's gaze felt unusually direct, as though meeting her eyes with quiet intensity. The visitor stepped closer, studying the details of the portrait. As she moved, she sensed the gaze shift subtly to maintain eye contact. She backed away, and the sensation followed. Only when she left the hallway did the feeling finally fade. Despite these eerie experiences, Ironford Colonial Mansion remains a place of great beauty and historical richness. Sunlight in the afternoon gives the rooms a warm glow, illuminating the craftsmanship poured into every beam and panel. The gardens outside offer peaceful views of the surrounding hills. Birds nest in nearby trees, and gentle breezes drift through open windows, carrying the soft rustle of leaves. The mansion's mysterious qualities blend with this serenity, creating an atmosphere that feels layered and complex rather than frightening. Visitors leave with a sense of awe. Reflecting on the intricate connection between the mansion's physical structure and the memories it seems to hold. They recall the portraits whose eyes appeared to follow them, capturing the silent watchfulness of generations past. These impressions linger long after guests depart, shaping the legend of Ironford Colonial Mansion as a place where history continues to move, breathe, and observe. The mansion endures as a testament to the lives that shaped it. A house where echoes remain, where stairs speak, and where painted faces seem to watch from across time. Those who enter find themselves immersed in an atmosphere both mysterious and deeply human. Walking through a space where the past feels close enough to touch. And the house itself seems to acknowledge every step. Windermere Gables stands at the crest of a windswept hill, overlooking rolling meadows that stretch across the landscape in soft, uneven waves. The home, built during the colonial era, rises with steep gables, wooden trim, and narrow windows that catch the changing light of dusk and dawn. Time has worn its structure, leaving small cracks along the wooden frame and gaps between the aged boards. These imperfections do little to diminish its charm. Instead, they contribute to the estate's peculiar atmosphere, especially when the wind begins to move. When evening arrives, the breeze sweeps across the hill with gentle persistence. As it passes through the cracks of Windermere Gables, it creates soft, melodic tones that resonate through the structure. The sound drifts along the hallways, sometimes rising into delicate notes and sometimes dropping to deeper hums. Visitors describe the tones as soothing at first, almost like a distant lullaby. The house seems to sing in response to the wind, blending nature and architecture into a haunting harmony that fills every room. On certain nights, however, the tones shift into patterns reminiscent of old colonial hymns. These melodies echo faintly through the walls, forming sequences that resemble structured songs rather than random whistles. The effect is both beautiful and unnerving, as though the house recalls music from a distant century and repeats it for those who listen closely. Travelers who hear these hymns often pause in the dim hallways or sit quietly near the windows, trying to determine whether the sound originates from the wind or something within the home itself. The tones follow a rhythm that seems too intentional to be accidental. On windy nights, the melodies drift from room to room, weaving through the rafters and settling into the corners like memories carried on the breeze. The hymns are never loud. Instead, they hover at the edge of perception, encouraging listeners to lean in and focus. Some visitors claim the melodies grow clearer when they stand near the attic staircase, as though the upper level of the house holds the source of the sound. This belief is strengthened by the sightings surrounding the attic window. Late at night, when the wind swells and the house begins to echo with melodic tones, a woman's silhouette is often seen standing behind the attic glass. The figure appears motionless, illuminated faintly by moonlight or the glow of lanterns from below. Her outline is clear but her features are hidden, cast in shadow against the aged windowpane. Some describe her posture as calm, as though she watches over the grounds, while others feel she appears expectant, as if listening for something beyond the hills. Regardless of interpretation, the silhouette disappears whenever someone climbs the stairs to approach the attic. The space above is quiet and untouched, filled only with old trunks, dust-covered furniture, and the faint whistle of wind through the rafters. No footprints disturb the thin layer of dust on the floor. No sign of recent presence is found. Yet the silhouette continues to appear, observed by travelers from the yard, the road, or the bedrooms below. The interior of Windermere Gables carries the weight of centuries. Wooden floors creak under every step, revealing the home's age with each movement. The walls are adorned with fading wallpaper patterned in floral designs, remnants of a bygone era. Paintings of unknown figures line the corridors, their expressions softened by age. Every room feels lived in, even though the estate no longer houses permanent residents. The air smells faintly of old books, candle wax, and the faint trace of dried herbs once used to scent the rooms. Late at night, when the hymns drift through the cracks, shadows shift along the walls in gentle patterns. They stretch and contract with the flicker of lanterns and the movement of the wind. Though nothing within the house physically changes, the atmosphere transforms. The entire structure takes on a dreamlike quality, as though it remembers parts of its history and reveals them subtly through sound and shadow. Local stories about Windermere Gables paint a picture of its earlier days. The original owner was said to be a woman known for her musical talent, often playing hymns that echoed through the house and out into the fields. Her music was described as calming, offering comfort to those who lived nearby during hard seasons. Some say she composed melodies inspired by the wind that swept across the hill, listening to its patterns and weaving them into her songs. Over time, these hymns became associated with the estate itself. When the woman passed away, the home fell silent for several years. Yet as the structure aged and cracks formed in its frame, the wind found new ways to enter, creating tones that reminded locals of her music. The melodies were faint and fragmented, but enough to spark renewed rumors. Many believed the house continued her songs, shaped by the wind but guided by lingering memory. Whether true or imagined, the hymns have persisted through generations, always returning when the wind is strong enough and the night quiet enough to let them rise. The silhouette in the attic adds depth to these legends. Some claim the figure resembles the original owner, her presence tied to the melodies drifting through the home. Others suggest the silhouette belongs to someone entirely different, perhaps a former resident drawn to the upper window by the sound of the wind. Regardless of identity, the figure has become part of the estate's lore, appearing frequently enough to confirm that Windermere Gables holds more than architectural charm. Travelers who spend the night at the estate often leave with vivid memories. They recall lying awake as the house fills with melodic tones, hearing hymns that form and dissolve like whispers. They recall lying awake as the house fills with melodic tones, hearing hymns that form and dissolve like whispers. They remember glimpsing the silhouette framed in moonlight, unmoving yet unmistakable. They remember glimpsing the silhouette framed in moonlight, unmoving yet unmistakable. Some describe feeling watched in a gentle way, as though the house acknowledges their presence without menace. Some describe feeling watched in a gentle way, as though the house acknowledges their presence without menace. Others speak of waking to silence just before dawn, the melodies fading with the wind as the first light touches the hills. Others speak of waking to silence just before dawn, the melodies fading with the wind as the first light touches the hills. When morning arrives, Windermere Gables stands quiet once more. The wind softens, losing its musical quality. The attic window reveals nothing but dust and shadow. The estate looks like an ordinary colonial home weathered by time, its mysteries hidden beneath daylight's clarity. Yet those who have heard the night's melodies know the house transforms when darkness settles and the wind begins to move with purpose. Windermere Gables remains a place where sound becomes a storyteller, where melodies shape the night, and where a silhouette in the attic window watches the world with quiet composure. Whether explained by natural acoustics or something more elusive, the estate continues to captivate all who visit, offering an experience that lingers long after the wind's hymns fall silent. At the edge of a sprawling settlement, where old roads give way to thick woodland and the canopy rises in layers of dense green, stands a grand structure known as Deepwood Hall. Built beside dense forest, the Hala's architecture carries a stately presence, its tall windows poised like watchful eyes facing the trees. The wooden beams, weathered by decades of sun and rain, still retain their strength, holding the structure with a quiet dignity. Moss clings to the stone foundation, creeping upward in soft patches that blend the building with the landscape around it. From the outside, Deepwood Hall appears both noble and forgotten, a place where history lingers in the shadows of its walls. As daylight fades, the forest behind the hall takes on a life of its own. The trees stand tall and tightly gathered, forming a near impenetrable wall of trunks and branches. At dusk, when the last rays of sunlight slip behind the horizon, shadows of people walk among the trees. These shadows drift between the trunks, moving with deliberate steps that mirror the gait of human figures. Their silhouettes stretch across the forest floor, shifting with the uneven glow of moonlight filtering through the leaves. Travelers passing the area often pause, watching the shadows weave silently through the trees despite the absence of any visible person. The phenomenon is subtle at first. Then another appears, following a separate path deeper in the forest. Soon, multiple silhouettes move through the darkness at varying distances, some close enough to distinguish their human shapes, others farther away, flickering like fragments of darkness. When travelers attempt to approach the forest to investigate, the shadows dissipate into the darkness, leaving only the whisper of leaves shifting in the wind. Deepwood Hall itself carries an atmosphere steeped in these strange occurrences. The interior is vast, with wide hallways, tall ceilings, and rooms arranged in long rows. Sunlight enters through large windows during the day, illuminating wooden floors and antique furnishings that hint at the Hala's grandeur during its early years. But once evening arrives, the halls fall into dimness, and the house feels heavier, as though absorbing the weight of the surrounding forest. Even the air changes, growing still and thick with the scent of old timber and faint traces of earth carried in from outside. Inside the hall, doors slam suddenly as if unseen guests are arriving or leaving. These sudden bursts of sound echo sharply through the corridors, reverberating off the walls with a force that startles even the most composed visitors. Sometimes a door near the main entrance swings shut without a breeze or any visible cause. Other times, a door on the upper floor closes with enough force to rattle the windows nearby. The phenomenon happens both during the night and in the middle of the day, leaving travelers uncertain whether the cause is mechanical or something less tangible. Many who step inside describe the feeling of not being alone. They detect subtle shifts in the air, like movement occurring just beyond their peripheral vision. The Hala's long corridors seem to amplify this sensation. A person might turn to check behind them, only to find an empty hallway stretching out in silent stillness. Yet the sensation remains, pressing against their thoughts with quiet insistence. The hall feels occupied, though no one can say by what. In the main parlor, where fading wallpaper frames old wooden furniture, the atmosphere grows more intense. Visitors often hear faint creaks near the walls, as though someone is leaning gently against the boards. At times, the chandelier suspended from the ceiling sways slightly, though no draft touches the room. Some travelers report hearing soft footsteps on the upper floor even when the entire group is gathered downstairs. These sounds echo through the hall as though imprinted into the structure itself, remnants of past movements replaying long after the original footsteps have vanished from memory. The forest behind the hall is known for its dense growth, but it holds stories as well. Some believe the shadows seen among the trees are echoes of those who once lived near the hall, their forms recorded by the land and played back in the fading light. Others suggest the shadows belong to beings bound to the forest, guardians or wanderers whose presence cannot fully cross into the human world. The connection between the forest and the hall feels unmistakable. The shadows appear only after dusk. And the doors slamming often intensifies at the same time. As though both phenomena stem from a shared origin. Legends surrounding Deepwood Hall speak of its early residents. According to old tales, the family who built the hall maintained strong ties with the forest, believing it to be alive with unseen spirits. Some stories claim the family conducted rituals meant to honor the forest's presence, welcoming its influence into the hall. Whether these tales hold truth or are simply folklore passed down through generations, the hall still carries an energy that aligns with the mysterious happenings in the woods. The building does not feel abandoned. Instead, it feels inhabited by memories and impressions left behind by those who once lived within its walls. Those who once lived within its walls. Impressions left behind by those who once lived within its walls. Researchers who have investigated the hall propose more conventional explanations. They note that the wooden structure may shift with temperature changes, causing doors to move or slam unexpectedly. They point out that shadows cast by passing clouds or distant sources of light can create illusions along the forest floor. While these theories address certain aspects, they cannot fully explain the coordinated movements of the shadows or the timing of the slamming doors that align so precisely with dusk. The hall's unexplained events seem too consistent, too connected to the environment, to be entirely coincidental. Visitors who spend extended time at Deepwood Hall often experience an evolving relationship with the space. At first, they notice the shadows and the door slams with surprise. Over time, they begin to sense the rhythm of the hall, the way the air shifts as night approaches, or how silence settles deeply before a door slams. Some visitors describe moments of calm familiarity, as though the hall acknowledges their presence. Others feel an increasing unease, sensing that the shadows outside and the sounds within move with intention. When travelers depart the hall and step back into the daylight, the atmosphere changes instantly. The heavy quiet dissolves. The forest stands still, offering no sign of the silhouettes that drift through it after dusk. Yet the memory of Deepwood Hall lingers. Visitors recall the echoing footsteps, the slamming doors, and the silent figures moving among the trees. The hall remains a bridge between the visible and the unseen. A place where the mysteries of the forest seep into wooden walls and long corridors, shaping experiences that defy simple explanation. Deepwood Hall endures as a structure bound to its environment, influenced by the forest that grows behind it and the shadows that walk among the trees. Its walls carry echoes of movement. Its doors open and shut without visible cause. Its halls feel alive with footsteps that do not belong to the present moment. And for those who enter, the experience becomes a blend of history, mystery, and quiet tension, leaving an impression that does not fade with distance or time. Sablecroft House sits alone at the end of a long, overgrown path, where old trees lean inward as if shielding the property from view. The house is large, built from dark timber and aged stone, with a steep roof. With a steep roof that disappears into the surrounding shadows. But its most striking feature, the detail that unsettles visitors before they even reach the door, is the set of heavy black shutters. Covering every window. They remain tightly closed at all hours, sealed against daylight and moonlight alike. The house seems to refuse the outside world, hiding whatever lingers within. Approaching the front porch, travelers describe a growing weight in the air. The atmosphere feels thick, almost expectant, as if the house is aware of their presence. The wood of the porch groans softly with each step, long and used and brittle from years of exposure. The front door stands slightly crooked on its hinges, yet avoids swinging open on its own, as though resisting entry. Even in daylight, the interior appears pitch black through the sliver of open space between the door and its frame. Visitors who gather the courage to enter Sablecroft House encounter a silence so profound it seems to swallow every footstep. Dust floats through narrow beams of lantern light, drifting in slow spirals. The air inside is cool, carrying the faint scent of old timber and something metallic. The walls are lined with wooden panels, each meticulously carved with intricate patterns of interlocking shapes. These patterns fade in some areas, worn smooth by time, while in others they remain sharp enough to catch fingertips. It is within these walls that the most unsettling phenomenon of Sablecroft House begins. Visitors hear tapping behind the wooden panels. The sound is barely perceptible beneath the quiet ambience of the house. It might be mistaken for settling wood or the distant creaking of beams. But when explorers pause and stand still, the pattern becomes unmistakable. The tapping repeats with deliberate rhythm, soft but intentional, echoing along the inner framework of the house. It shifts location, moving from one wall to another, sometimes following visitors as they explore deeper into the structure. Some describe the tapping as fingers running along the wooden panels. This impression comes from the way the sound glides rather than strikes, brushing across the surface with a slow, deliberate pace. The tapping sometimes quickens for a moment, then trails off into a gentle rustling, as if something behind the wall is tracing the carvings with curiosity or attention. The sensation grows particularly strong near corners and narrow hallways, where the walls appear thicker, as though concealing hidden spaces. Those who have spent extended time inside report the tapping escalating at unexpected moments. In empty rooms, the sound pulses from multiple directions at once, creating the impression of invisible hands moving along the wood in slow and deliberate patterns. Some visitors claim they felt vibrations beneath their palms when touching the panels, subtle tremors accompanying each tap. A few recall stepping back quickly, believing something might emerge from behind the wall. The black shutters play an important role in the legend of Sablecroft House. Their tight seal prevents any natural light from entering. And attempts to open them often fail due to rust, warped frames, or an unyielding force seemingly holding them shut. Even when explorers manage to pry a shutter slightly loose, the wooden slats snap back with surprising strength. Some believe the shutters serve as a barrier, trapping whatever moves inside the walls. Others think they protect outsiders from seeing what dwells in the dark interior of the house. As visitors move through the rooms, they notice that the tapping changes character depending on the space. In the dining room, the tapping becomes lighter, almost playful, drifting along the edges of the long table as though following an invisible path. In the upstairs hallway, it becomes more insistent, striking in quick bursts that echo sharply through the narrow corridor. Some explorers stop at these moments, sensing that the source of the tapping is aware of their presence. At the heart of the house lies a large sitting room, its walls covered completely in wooden panels from floor to ceiling. This is where the tapping grows most intense. Visitors describe hearing multiple patterns at once, some soft and meandering, others fast and purposeful. The mixture of sounds creates an effect that feels almost conversational, though no clear meaning emerges. The tapping seems to respond to movement, to sound, even to silence. It is as though the house itself holds a rhythm that visitors interrupt merely by stepping inside. Theories about the tapping vary widely. Some attribute it to trapped air currents moving through old wooden beams. Others believe small animals might be responsible, though the deliberate rhythm of the sound challenges this explanation. More supernatural interpretations suggest that the house retains echoes of previous occupants, their presence forever etched into the walls. Legends claim a former resident spent decades carving the intricate patterns throughout the home, believing the wood held memories of every touch. After his passing, the house may have retained more than just his craftsmanship. One explorer reported an experience that remains one of the most detailed accounts. As he moved through the sitting room, the tapping began directly behind him. He froze, waiting for it to stop, but instead the sound moved slowly along the paneling to his left. It paused, then resumed behind his right shoulder. He described feeling an overwhelming sense of being observed from within the walls, as though unseen eyes shifted their focus with every sound he made. When he finally stepped back toward the door, the tapping followed him in a rhythmic pattern that matched his pace. Only when he left the room did the sound fade into silence. Other visitors describe moments when the tapping ceases entirely, creating an unnatural stillness that lasts several seconds before returning with renewed intensity. These pauses often occur when someone speaks aloud or shines a bright light directly onto the panels, as if the presence within the walls reacts to the intrusion. Despite the unsettling phenomena, Sablecroft House continues to draw attention for its architectural beauty and enigmatic atmosphere. The craftsmanship of the wooden panels is unmatched. And the layout of the house hints at hidden rooms or forgotten passages. Some believe uncovering these secrets might reveal the true nature of the tapping. But the house remains steadfast in its silence beyond the walls, offering only sound, not answers. For those who visit, Sablecroft House becomes a place where mystery takes physical form. The tapping follows from room to room. The shutters remain closed, denying any glimpse of the outside world. And the walls hold their secrets with patient persistence. Within these quiet halls, time feels suspended. Every sound feels deliberate. And the presence behind the wooden panels continues its rhythmic, unsettling dance, waiting for the next visitor to listen. Pinecrest Colonial Inn sits quietly among towering rows of pine trees that sway in the mountain wind, filling the air with the scent of sap and evergreen needles. Built along a once well-traveled road, the inn served as a resting place for weary travelers journeying between distant settlements. Its structure has changed little over the years. Wooden beams darkened by age hold up a steep roof, cracked windows catch morning light in uneven angles, and the porch boards creak gently beneath every step. Though no longer bustling with visitors as it once did, the inn still carries the warmth of past hospitality, mixed with a quiet unease that has become part of its identity. Inside, the inn has the comforting feel of a place lived in for generations. The floors, worn smooth in places, carry the marks of countless boots and shoes that crossed through the main hallway. Old lanterns hang from hooks, casting soft golden light that gathers in the corners, illuminating dust drifting like slow-moving snowflakes. The atmosphere is peaceful at first glance, touched by nostalgia and the charm of a bygone era. Yet, Pinecrest Colonial Inn is known not only for the strange sounds that echo through its halls long after the guests have retired for the night. Visitors often report hearing children laughing in empty rooms. The laughter begins softly, like a distant giggle drifting through a cracked door. It grows louder in moments, bouncing from one room to another in playful bursts. The sound carries a brightness that contrasts sharply with the quiet of the inn, as though a group of children rushes past just out of sight. When guests investigate, they find the rooms empty and still. No breeze moves the curtains. No shadows shift beneath the furniture. Only silence remains, as if the laughter hid itself the moment the door swung open. These sounds occur most often just after sunset, when the last traces of light fade behind the pines. People sitting in the lounge often pause mid-conversation, glancing toward the staircase as the laughter drifts down from the second floor. Some describe it as joyful, others say it carries a strange echo, as though the voices come from very far away. Regardless of interpretation, the laughter never feels hostile. Instead, it carries a peculiar innocence, reminding visitors of children playing tag or whispering secrets to one another before bedtime. At dawn, the inn awakens to a different kind of sound. Bouncy footsteps race across upstairs floorboards in quick, rhythmic patterns. The footsteps move lightly, as though belonging to small children running back and forth in excited bursts. Guests lying in their rooms often wake to the sound before the sun has fully risen, listening as the footsteps dart from one end of the hallway to the other. They continue for several minutes, sometimes pausing briefly before beginning again with renewed energy. By the time travelers step out into the hall, the footsteps have vanished. Those staying in the rooms beneath the upper floor describe the sensation vividly. The ceiling trembles softly with each step, the boards above responding with cheerful squeaks as though delighted by the activity. Some guests admit the sound startled them at first, but over time they found it strangely comforting. Others confess the footsteps made their hearts race, stirring a curiosity they could not ignore. Despite the questions these sounds inspire, the footsteps cease abruptly each morning once the sun crests the horizon, leaving behind only stillness and cold morning air. The history of Pinecrest Colonial Inn offers a framework for understanding its lingering sounds. In the late 19th century, the inn frequently hosted families traveling between settlements. Children often stayed in the upstairs rooms, and the wide hallway became a familiar playground for them. Old records recount stories of children who spent long evenings playing games, running along the creaking boards, and filling the air with laughter that echoed down the staircase. The inn's owners were known to leave small toys in the rooms for young visitors, a tradition that made families feel welcomed and at ease. Some believe the laughter and footsteps are echoes of these joyful moments, replayed by the inn as it remembers the happiest days of its past. Others speculate that something more deliberate lingers within the walls. The playful impressions of children who found comfort within the old wooden rooms and never truly left. While no definitive explanation exists, the consistency of these sounds throughout the years has shaped the inn's reputation as a place where history is not only remembered, but relived. Visitors describe moments when the laughter seems to respond to their movements. A guest standing quietly in the hallway may hear a sudden burst of giggles behind a closed door, only for the sound to move swiftly toward the staircase. As they step onto the first stair, as though the unseen children scatter in excitement. Yet each investigation leads to the same conclusion. The rooms remain empty. The hallways deserted. And the air still, carrying only the faint scent of pine wood and old dust. One traveler recounted rising early to watch the sunrise through the window of his upstairs room. As he approached the glass, he heard rapid footsteps race down the hallway behind him. They paused at his door before darting away, as if something paused to watch the sunrise with him before moving on. When he stepped into the hall, only silence greeted him. The boards felt cool beneath his feet. The light soft and pale as it filtered through the curtains. Another visitor described hearing laughter drifting from the room next to hers late at night. She knocked softly, wondering if another guest needed assistance. The laughter stopped instantly. When she opened the door, she found an empty room lit only by the moonlight. The laughter returned moments later, this time from somewhere farther down the hall. Despite its mysterious nature, Pinecrest Colonial Inn remains a welcoming refuge, filled with charm and stories. Filled with charm and stories that enrich its warm atmosphere. Guests leave with memories shaped not only by the soft pine-scented air, or the rustic rooms, but by the sounds that whisper through the inn. Like forgotten echoes of childhood. The laughter and footsteps offer a glimpse into a time when the inn was filled with life. And the walls seem determined to keep that spirit alive. Pinecrest Colonial Inn stands today as a place where the past continues to move gently through the present. Where laughter lingers in the shadows, and where the sound of running feet greets the dawn each morning. Those who stay find themselves touched by its mystery, comforted by its history. And reminded that even in silence, joy can echo through time. Highfield Crossway Mansion rises from a quiet expanse of countryside where two forgotten colonial paths once met. The intersection no longer serves travelers, yet its position still feels purposeful, as though the land remembers its history even if the roads have faded from view. As though the land remembers its history even if the roads have faded from view. The mansion stands at their crossing, built from pale stone and heavy timber that have endured centuries of storms, seasons, and silence. During the day, Highfield Crossway Mansion appears dignified and serene. Sunlight warms the stone FAA section ade, illuminating ivy that climbs the walls in twisting patterns. Windows framed in dark wood catch the light and reflect the surrounding fields, creating shimmering glimpses of the world beyond. The grounds extend far in every direction, offering sweeping views of rolling hills and distant tree lines. A faint sense of nostalgia lingers in the air, as though the mansion holds memories from generations past. But when dusk settles across the land, the mansiona's presence becomes more mysterious. Shadows from the tall grass stretch across the old paths, merging with the darkening outline of the house. The wind dies down, leaving an unusual stillness that settles heavily over the property. It is during these quiet hours that visitors report hearing the distinct sound of a horse trotting outside. The sound begins faintly, usually near the back of the mansion where the old paths once met. Soft rhythmic steps tap against the ground, growing steadily clearer. Hooves strike the earth with deliberate pacing, never hurried yet never hesitating. The echoes of the steps travel through the night, drifting across the yard and rising faintly through the mansiona's windows. Inside, the sound is even more pronounced. Those who stay overnight often pause in their rooms upon hearing the first steps. The trotting circles the house in slow, measured loops. Sometimes it passes directly beneath a window, so clear that guests instinctively look outside expecting to see the animal standing in the moonlit yard. Yet the grounds remain empty, the grass undisturbed, the landscape silent except for the rhythmic echo of hooves. The trotting usually continues for several minutes before fading into the distance. Some nights, it returns without warning, beginning again near the crossroads and making another circuit around the mansion. Listeners describe the sound as both real and surreal, as though it exists outside the usual rules of nature. The horse never neighs, never snorts, and never breaks pace. Its steps follow a consistent rhythm that remains unchanged no matter the weather or the hour. What adds to the mystery is the absence of physical evidence. In the morning, the grounds surrounding the mansion remain pristine. No hoofprints appear in the soil or grass. No disturbed patches mark the old paths. Even on nights when rain has softened the earth, the ground shows no sign that anything passed through. This lack of prints fuels speculation among those who visit the mansion, convincing many that the nightly horse is not a living creature but a remnant of the past. The interior of Highfield Crossway Mansion deepens this sense of lingering history. Wooden staircases creak under each step, echoing through the quiet rooms. Candle sconces and old chandeliers still decorate the walls and ceilings, casting warm light during evening hours. The air carries a faint scent of old books, polish, and preserved linens, creating an atmosphere suspended between centuries. In the Mansiona's grand study, large windows overlook the crossroads. Visitors who sit there at night often choose to observe the paths, hoping to glimpse the source of the trotting. The moonlight reveals only the gentle sway of grass and the outline of the old routes. Yet even when nothing appears, the sound continues with startling clarity. Some report sensing a presence moving along the paths, as though the sound heralds the return of a long unseen traveler who once rode these routes faithfully. Local lore surrounding the mansion offers several explanations. One of the most enduring tales speaks of a colonial courier who traveled the crossroads nightly, delivering messages between distant settlements. According to the legend, his horse became as well known as the rider himself, and the pair grew inseparable. One night during a heavy storm, the courier never returned. The horse was later found wandering near the crossroads, but the rider was never located. Some believe the horse continues its nightly route, loyal even beyond the boundaries of time. Another story claims the mansion once served as a meeting place for colonial leaders who relied on mounted messengers to carry urgent news. The nightly trotting, they say, is an echo of these journeys, a reminder of the horse that once carried crucial messages to and from the house. Whether these stories hold truth or simply reflect the imagination of those who seek explanations for the unexplained, they contribute to the Mansiona's enduring mystique. Despite the legends, many visitors remain unsure what to believe. Some experience the nightly trotting only faintly, attributing it to distant wildlife or shifting earth. Others hear it as clearly as if the horse stands just outside their door. For these individuals, the sound feels undeniable, too rhythmic and deliberate to dismiss. They describe the sensation of being watched, not with malice but with a presence that recognizes the house and its occupants. This presence feels like it's watching them, always. Even those who approach the crossroads at night, determined to catch sight of the horse, find nothing but shadows and silence. The sound fades as they draw near, returning only when they step away and allow the night to resume its quiet dominance. At sunrise, Highfield Crossway Mansion regains its tranquil appearance. The morning light softens the stone walls, and the grass glows with dew. The birds begin to call across the fields, replacing the silence of night with familiar sounds. The echoes of the horse's trotting disappear completely, leaving only the memory of its rhythmic steps. It is as though the mansion holds two identities, one shaped by daylight and another revealed only in darkness. Highfield Crossway Mansion remains a place where history seems to wander through the night, carried on the steady rhythm of unseen hooves. Whether explained by legend, memory, or natural illusion, the nightly presence adds a mysterious dimension to the estate. Travelers who hear the trotting footsteps leave with a sense of wonder, unsure whether they encountered an echo of the past or something far more enigmatic moving along the forgotten crossroads. At the far edge of a quiet countryside, where rolling fields give way to a line of tall oaks and tangled undergrowth, stands a grand yet somber structure known as Marrowbrook Estate. The mansion, constructed from pale stone and framed by dark timber, rises above the landscape like a sentinel watching over the land it has occupied for generations. Its windows reflect the soft glow of daylight, offering brief glimpses into rooms lined with aging drapery and antique furnishings. Despite its elegance, the estate carries an aura of stillness, as though the building holds its breath in anticipation of something unseen. Behind the mansion lies the brook that gives the estate its name. The water winds through a shallow channel, bordered by moss-covered stones and overhanging branches. During the day, the brook appears peaceful, its clear surface broken only by drifting leaves or the occasional ripple from a passing breeze. The gentle sound of flowing water adds a sense of serenity to the grounds, accompanying birdsong and the rustle of wildlife hidden among the trees. Visitors often find themselves drawn to the brook, admiring the way sunlight dances across its surface. But everything changes when night falls over Marrowbrook Estate. When darkness settles across the fields, and the last traces of light fade from the sky, The brook transforms into something far more mysterious. At night, it sounds like whispering voices. The gentle flow of water becomes layered with soft, indistinct murmurs that drift through the still air. These whispers do not resemble the natural babble of a stream. They rise and fall in patterns that evoke the cadence of hushed conversation. Some listeners describe them as sorrowful, while others claim they carry a tone of warning or longing. The deeper the night grows, the clearer the whispers become, weaving through the trees like threads of sound. The mansion itself grows unnervingly quiet during these hours. The halls that seemed warm and inviting during daylight become shrouded in shadows, their silence deep enough to amplify every distant murmur from the brook. Visitors often find it difficult to ignore the sound, even from inside the house. Others, driven by curiosity, step outside to approach the source of the mysterious voices. The whispers seem to seep through the walls, drifting faintly into rooms no matter how tightly the windows are closed. Many guests choose to remain indoors, unwilling to venture near the water after nightfall. Others, driven by curiosity, step outside to approach the source of the mysterious voices. Those who walk toward the brook at night. The air grows colder, carrying a faint moisture that clings to the skin. The murmurs grow louder, swirling around the listener as if the voices rise directly from the surface of the water. The darkness deepens around the trees, and the soft glow from the mansion's windows seems distant, almost fragile. Visitors sometimes pause at the edge of the brook, uncertain whether to step closer or retreat. But it is often the sight that follows which lingers most vividly in their memory. Visitors see pale figures standing in the water, motionless. These figures appear faint at first, barely distinguishable from the reflection of moonlight on the surface. But as the eyes adjust, the shapes grow clearer. They stand in shallow areas of the brook, arranged at various distances from the shore. Their forms are slender, elongated by the rippling water that distorts their shapes. None of the figures move. They simply stand, facing toward the viewer or toward the mansion, their outlines shimmering faintly as though illuminated from within. The stillness of these figures intensifies the uncanny atmosphere. Even when the water flows gently around their legs, the figures remain perfectly motionless, unaffected by the current. Visitors often step backward instinctively, sensing a presence more profound than mere shadow or reflection. Some report feeling as though the figures are watching, though their features are too indistinct to confirm. The figures do not step forward or vanish abruptly. Instead, they remain in place, fading gradually into the darkness when the viewer turns away or when the whispering voices begin to recede. Local legends offer various interpretations of the phenomena surrounding Marrowbrook Estate. One tale suggests that the brook once served as a boundary between two settlements whose histories were marked by conflict. According to this story, the pale figures are the lingering impressions of those who suffered during those difficult times. Their voices, carried by the water, whisper memories of their past, unable to fully dissolve into the passage of time. Another story depicts the brook as a gathering place for wandering spirits, drawn to the estate by its long history and secluded surroundings. The voices and figures, in this interpretation, are merely part of the natural rhythm of the land. Researchers who have visited the estate offer more grounded explanations. They argue that the whispering voices may be caused by the movement of water against hidden rock formations, producing harmonic vibrations that sound like murmurs to the human ear. The pale figures, they suggest, could be illusions created by mist, moonlight, or the reflection of distant objects on the water. Yet these explanations struggle to account for the consistency of the sightings and the precision of the figurisa outlines, especially when multiple witnesses describe the same details independently. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere reflects the unease generated by the nightly phenomena. Doors creak softly despite no breeze, and the old wooden floors shift with subtle pops and groans. While these sounds are typical of aging structures, their timing often aligns with the rise and fall of the whispering voices outside. Some visitors report hearing faint footsteps along the upper hallways, though no one else occupies the space. Others claim that certain rooms feel colder at night, particularly those facing the direction of the brook. These sensations reinforce the impression that the mansion is intertwined with the mysteries occurring just beyond its walls. The experience of staying overnight at Marrowbrook Estate leaves a lasting impression on visitors. Many remember lying awake, listening to the faint whispers drifting across the grounds. They recall the moment they first glimpsed pale shapes standing in the water, unmoving and silent. They describe the feeling of being watched, not with hostility, but with a quiet, searching presence that defies easy explanation. Even those who dismiss the supernatural often admit that the estate holds a peculiar energy that cannot fully be attributed to its age or location. In the early morning hours, when the first light of dawn touches the horizon, the brook returns to its peaceful state. The whispers fade into the gentle bubbling of water over stones. The pale figures disappear entirely, leaving no trace of their presence. The estate feels lighter during the day, as though the mysteries of the night retreat into the depths of the brook, waiting for darkness to return. Marrowbrook Estate endures as a place where the natural and the unknown intertwine. Its brook carries whispers that echo through the night. Its waters reflect shapes that linger just beyond understanding. And its halls offer a quiet refuge for travelers who find themselves caught between curiosity and caution. Whether shaped by legend, environment, or something deeper, the estate remains a captivating and eerie reminder of the unseen layers of the world, always waiting in the quiet spaces where water flows and shadows gather. Thornwell Homestead stands at the edge of a windswept field where the land dips gently toward a dense thicket of wild vegetation. The house itself is old, built of fading timber and stone that has weathered countless seasons. Its roof sags slightly under years of neglect. The windows, though intact, reflect little light, as though something inside absorbs more than it reveals. Yet the most striking feature of this secluded dwelling is not the house itself, but the barrier that surrounds it. Thorn bushes encircle the property in a tangled, towering ring. Their branches twist together so tightly that they resemble a natural fortress, their thorns long, sharp, and uninviting. Some bushes have grown so densely that even daylight struggles to penetrate their shadows. It is said that the original owners of Thornwell Homestead planted them intentionally, hoping to shield the property from predators, storms, or perhaps something more mysterious. Over time, the thorns grew beyond control, weaving themselves into a barrier that seems both protective and imprisoning. Every night, something rustles through them. At first, the sound is soft, a gentle brushing as though a breeze stirs the branches. But those who spend time near the homestead know better. The wind moves differently here. The rustling comes even on still nights when the air hangs heavy without motion. The sound is too consistent, too intentional to be random wildlife. The branches shift, scraping together in patterns that whisper across the field. Rising and falling like breathing. Some swear they saw hands reaching through the thorns. The thorns. They saw hands reaching through 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 the thorns. They saw hands reaching through. These accounts often come from travelers passing by at dusk or from curious explorers who venture too close to the barrier. They describe pale shapes emerging from gaps in the branches, fingers curling through the narrow spaces as though testing for weakness. The hands appear thin, elongated, and strangely slow in their movements, lacking the frantic energy of animals. Witnesses say the fingers tap softly against the thorns, brushing them aside only to retreat into the shadows when spotted. These sightings vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving behind only the rustling sound and a lingering sense of unease. Walking toward the homestead feels like approaching a place frozen in time. The thorn ring forms a boundary that seems more psychological than physical. Even before reaching it, visitors often feel watched, as though eyes peer out from the depths of the tangled barrier. The air grows cooler. The silence of the field amplifies, interrupted only by the quiet stirrings within the thorns. The house stands at the center like an island surrounded by a living moat. Stepping through the narrow entry in the thorn wall reveals a small yard, overgrown but calm. The house looms ahead, its porch sagging slightly under the weight of years. Inside, Thornwell Homestead is dim but surprisingly intact. Dust blankets the furniture. Cobwebs stretch across corners. The air carries a stillness that feels ancient, yet beneath the quiet, visitors sense the presence of something waiting. At night, the atmosphere shifts. From inside the house, the thorn rustling grows louder. The thorn rustling grows louder and moves around the property in slow circles. Sometimes it stops entirely, lingering in one spot as though something within the thorns listens. The sound resumes without warning, scraping along the branches before fading into a soft hush. Some guests describe hearing faint patterns within the rustling, like coded movements or signals exchanged through the twisting vines. Those who stay in the homestead overnight occasionally report sounds from within the walls. Not footsteps, nor whispers, but something softer. A brushing sound, similar to the rustling thorns outside, but closer. Some believe the barrier's influence extends into the home, creeping through cracks in the wood, bringing its presence with it. Others think the hands seen in the thorns belong to something that once lived inside the house and still remembers its way around. One explorer described waking to the sound of thorns scraping along the window. The noise was gentle at first, then grew more insistent, as though something outside was pressing against the glass. When he looked up, he saw only darkness beyond the shutters. But the scraping continued with slow, deliberate strokes. Moments later, it stopped suddenly, replaced by the familiar rustling circling the house once more. Another visitor recounted standing near the thorn barrier at dusk, drawn by the sound of movement within. As he watched, small gaps opened in the branches, and pale shapes pressed outward. The fingers pushed through the spaces but did not emerge fully. The hands withdrew when he stepped closer, vanishing into the dense brush with a faint rustle. Theories surrounding the thorn barrier are numerous. Some believe the original family planted the bushes to guard against intruders, perhaps after a period of unrest or fear. Others think the thorns grew naturally, fed by the peculiar soil and the secrets buried beneath the homestead. A more unsettling theory suggests the barrier serves as a prison for something once inside the house, trapping it within the perimeter. Yet the presence of hands reaching outward raises questions that no single explanation can resolve. Despite these mysteries, Thornwell Homestead possesses a haunting beauty. The way the moonlight filters through the branches creates shifting shadows across the yard. And the constant rustling provides a rhythm that becomes strangely hypnotic, drawing listeners into a trance-like calm. But beneath the beauty lies an undeniable tension. Something moves through the thorns with deliberate purpose. Something watches from the spaces between branches. And something reaches out, testing the barrier that surrounds the property like a living wall. Whether it seeks escape, contact, or simply continues a ritual older than anyone remembers, no visitor can say for certain. For those who venture near Thornwell Homestead, the experience is unforgettable. The rustling of the thorns follows them long after they leave. The memory of pale hands lingers in their thoughts. And the sense of being watched stays with them, a quiet reminder of the unseen presence that dwells within the encircling barrier. In this secluded place, surrounded by briars and silence, Thornwell Homestead stands as a testament to mysteries that cannot be explained, only witnessed. The thorns whisper. The branches shift. And every night, something moves through them, tracing the boundary between the known world and the secrets hidden within. Old Briarstone House sits at the edge of a quiet countryside, half hidden by overgrown hedges and winding paths of wild grass. Its structure rises tall and unbending, built from thick, weathered stone blocks that have endured centuries of wind, sun, and rain. The house has an unmistakable presence. Even from a distance, it looks like a place untouched by time, its walls standing strong while the land around it slowly shifts and grows. Many travelers approach out of curiosity, drawn by the mysteries whispered through the region. The first thing visitors notice is the temperature. No matter how hot the summer day may be, the stone walls remain cold beneath their fingertips. The chill settles into the skin, sinking deeper the longer one lingers. It is not the refreshing coolness found in shaded buildings, but a cold that feels older than the house itself. A cold that carries stories. Even small rooms with direct sunlight remain oddly frigid, as though the walls refuse to absorb warmth. Guests often remark that the house seems to draw heat away from the air. Leaving the interior wrapped in a dim, quiet stillness. The interior of Old Briarstone House holds a layout both simple and unsettling. Narrow hallways stretch between rooms filled with antique furniture, faded rugs, and tall windows that reflect light in muted tones. The floors creak faintly with each step, responding to even the lightest touch. The air smells of dust and old stone, mixed with the faint scent of dried herbs left behind by past residents. While the upper floors feel empty and still, the basement stirs with a presence that becomes more apparent the longer one listens. Footsteps echo through the basement with an unnerving consistency. They are not loud, but distinct enough to draw attention. They move slowly at times, drifting from one side of the stone room to the other. Other times, they fall in quick, uneven patterns, as though someone is pacing with anxious energy. Visitors who descend the creaking staircase into the basement often pause midway when they hear the footsteps begin. The sound rises from below, bouncing against the stone walls in soft, hollow echoes. The basement itself is a wide, open chamber supported by thick pillars. Moisture clings to the ceilings and walls, forming small beads. The cold in this space feels even more pronounced, settling into the air like a permanent fog. Lantern light flickers against the textured stone, revealing patches of darker color and areas rubbed smooth by hands or tools long forgotten. Despite the emptiness of the room, the footsteps persist. Some visitors say the sound grows louder when they step inside, as if acknowledging their presence. A few explorers have claimed the footsteps do not always originate from the floor. At times, the sound seems to come from the walls themselves, as though something or something moves just beyond the surface. They describe faint vibrations traveling through the stone, subtle tremors that pulse beneath their hands when they touch the cold surface. These vibrations never last long, fading quietly once noticed, leaving explorers in stillness once more. Yet the most unusual phenomenon tied to Old Briarstone House emerges only at midnight. At the stroke of 12, a soft humming sound vibrates through the entire structure. The humming does not resemble a voice or a machine. It carries a steady, resonant tone, low and continuous, like the faint hum of a distant tuning fork. The vibration travels through the floors, up the walls, and across every room. The humming is not loud, but it is impossible to ignore once it begins. The sound lasts for several minutes before fading into silence. Many describe it as peaceful, almost calming, though the context makes the experience unsettling. Others claim the humming changes pitch slightly from night to night, creating patterns that feel intentional. Guests who stay multiple evenings often attempt to predict the variation in tone, listening for any sign of rhythm or repetition. While the humming seems consistent at first, careful observation reveals subtle shifts that deepen the mystery. Stories passed down through generations offer several explanations for the strange occurrences. Some believe the house was built over an underground spring, with the water producing vibrations that travel through the stone. However, no evidence of such a spring has ever been found. Others say the house belonged to a reclusive craftsman who conducted unusual experiments in sound and resonance, leaving behind creations still buried within the walls. Another tale suggests the stones used to build the house were taken from a mountain known for producing strange acoustic effects. Though intriguing, none of these stories fully explain the footsteps, the cold walls, or the midnight humming that seems to seep from the very foundation of the home. Visitors often describe moments when the house feels aware of their presence. Some feel watched when standing in the basement, especially when the footsteps begin. Others report that the humming seems to intensify slightly when they move through certain rooms, as though responding to their steps. These sensations are fleeting, easy to dismiss, yet consistent enough to leave a lasting impression. Even those skeptical of anything unusual admit the house carries an unmistakable energy. One traveler recounted standing in the basement when the footsteps began directly behind him. He turned immediately, lantern held high, but found only empty space and cold air pressing against his skin. As he stepped backward, the footsteps resumed in the opposite corner of the room. The sound traveled in a slow arc across the floor, eventually fading into silence. He left the basement quickly, feeling the cold cling to him long after he reached the main hallway. Another guest shared her experience of the midnight humming. She said the sound woke her not with volume but with a gentle vibration in her pillow. As she opened her eyes, the room felt subtly alive, as though the walls themselves breathed with the sound. She listened as the steady hum filled the space, a tone both soothing and eerie. When it faded, the silence felt deeper than before, as though the house had exhaled and returned to rest. Old Briarstone House remains a place where natural explanation and mystery intermingle. Its stone walls reject the warmth of the world outside. Its basement echoes with footsteps that leave no prints. And at midnight, the house hums with an ancient resonance, offering a glimpse into something hidden beneath its foundation. Visitors leave with a sense of wonder, curiosity, and a lingering chill that reminds them of the house long after they have departed. In the quiet countryside, Old Briarstone House stands firm, holding its secrets close. Inviting those who seek mystery to step inside and listen to the stories whispered through its cold, unyielding stone. Lantern Spire Estate stands atop a gentle rise in the countryside, its silhouette unmistakable against the shifting hues of evening skies. Built during an era of grand architecture and remote luxury, the mansion sprawls wide with its sweeping stone walls, tall windows, and a roofline traced in elegant trim. A slender tower rises from the mansion's center, stretching high above the surrounding grounds like a watchful sentinel. This tower, known as the Spire, gives the estate its name, and it remains the source of its most enduring mystery. During the day, the tower appears serene, almost regal. Sunlight washes over the stone exterior, revealing intricate patterns carved into its surface. Birds rest upon its ledges. And the surrounding fields ripple in the wind below. Yet as daylight fades, the tower transforms. Soft glimmers appear at the topmost window. Faint at first and then settling into a flickering glow. The lights shift gently. as if cast by a lantern held by someone pacing the upper room. Travelers who pass through the area often notice these flickers long before they see the mansion itself. The glow rises above the treetops, suspended in the dark like a beacon. Some describe the light as steady, while others claim it pulses with irregular rhythm. The flicker grows brighter with each passing moment, illuminating the circular outline of the tower room. Though no occupants are known to reside there now, the light appears without fail each night, enduring even through harsh weather and moonless skies. Those who watch the tower more closely report an even stranger phenomenon. They see a figure pacing inside the room at the top of the spire. The figure's steps remain slow yet restless, as though the person cannot find stillness. Travelers describe the pacing as endless, with no sign of pause or interruption. The figure moves continuously, repeating the same route in an unbroken pattern throughout the night. At times, the silhouette appears to approach the window, pausing just long enough for observers to make out the shape of a head and shoulders before the figure turns away again. Other accounts mention seeing the figure gesture subtly, as though speaking to someone unseen or contemplating something heavy in thought. These fleeting glimpses lend a sense of humanity to the silhouette, even though no clear details ever emerge. The lack of identifiable features only deepens the mystery, encouraging speculation about who or what occupies the tower each night. The silhouette remains an enigma, shrouded in mystery and intrigue. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere holds a different kind of quiet. The grand halls echo softly with distant creaks, the kind made by settling wood or shifting stone. Portraits line the walls, their subjects faded with time. Spacious rooms open into dim corridors where sunlight rarely reaches. Dust gathers on ornate furniture, and the scent of aged wood lingers throughout the interior. Visitors exploring the estate rarely find their way into the tower. A narrow stairwell spirals upward through the core of the structure. But the door leading to the tower is often locked or swollen shut from age. Those who attempt the climb describe a heavy stillness along the stairwell, broken only by faint drafts of cool air drifting downward. These drafts feel different from normal breezes, carrying hints of distant sound that resemble quiet footsteps. Yet the upper room remains unreachable, its door immovable despite repeated attempts. Local stories about Lantern Spire Estate stretch back generations. Some say the tower once served as a private observatory for the mansione's original owner, who spent long nights studying the stars. Others claim it functioned as a refuge, a place of contemplation where residents retreated during times of grief or uncertainty. A few legends speak of a scholar who lived in the mansion long ago, dedicating his life to research and endlessly pacing the tower as he pondered his work. In these stories, the pacing became a nightly routine, a rhythm that continued long after he vanished from public life. As stories evolved, some began to suggest that the scholar's presence never fully left the tower. According to these accounts, the restless pacing reflects a search for answers that remain unresolved. Others believe the pacing reflects longing, as though the figure waits for someone who never arrived. None of these tales can be verified, but they persist due to the consistency of the sightings. Every traveler who witnesses the pacing describes it in nearly identical terms, adding credibility to the enduring mystery. Occasionally, investigators and curious explorers have attempted to document the phenomenon. Cameras trained on the tower capture the flickering light, but the silhouette rarely appears on video. When it does, the recorded image often blurs or distorts, leaving no clear evidence behind. Audio equipment picks up faint movements from within the spire, though these sounds resemble soft footfalls or shifting fabric rather than anything definitive. Despite repeated attempts, the tower offers no solid proof, only hints of presence that elude understanding. Standing on the grounds beneath the tower, the experience becomes even more powerful. On calm nights, the glow from the top window flickers against the dark sky, casting long shadows across the lawn. The silhouette continues to move within the tower room, pacing with measured steps. Visitors who stand and watch often feel an inexplicable weight, as though the air itself holds a sense of anticipation or sorrow. Some describe the presence as thoughtful, while others sense a deeper restlessness. Yet no one feels threatened. The pacing figure seems indifferent to observers, absorbed in its own pattern. As dawn approaches, the flickering light begins to fade. The silhouette slows, its movements less distinct as shadows soften with the arrival of morning. By the time the sun rises, the tower stands silent once more. The window reflects only the brightening sky, and no sign of the figure remains. For those who spent the night watching, the transition feels abrupt, as though the tower has closed its secrets with the dawn. Lantern Spire Estate remains a place where history and mystery intertwine. The towering spire with its nightly glow invites curiosity, while the restless silhouette inside suggests a story still unfolding. Whether the pacing figure represents memory, legend, or something beyond explanation, it continues to define the Estatea's identity. Travelers leave with vivid impressions of a tower that watches the night and a figure that walks endlessly within it, offering a glimpse into a world where the past lingers through light, shadow, and unanswered questions. On a quiet stretch of countryside, where rolling fields meet clusters of ancient oak trees, rises a mansion known nearly as much for its age as for its striking architectural feature. Red Hall Colonial residence stands tall among the landscape, distinguished by its vivid crimson shutters that line every window. The shutters contrast sharply with the weathered white siding of the mansion, giving the building an appearance both elegant and ominous. Even from a distance, the red stands out like a warning painted across the FAA's sectionade, catching the eye of every traveler who passes along the winding road nearby. The residence was built in the early colonial era, and its structure reflects the craftsmanship of that time. Tall columns frame the entrance. Wide porches stretch around the lower level. The windows, though aged and rippled with warped glass, still gleam when sunlight touches them. But it is those bold crimson shutters that define the Mansiona's character. Their color has remained strangely vibrant through decades of storms and sun exposure, as if untouched by the passing of years. During the day, Red Hall feels almost serene. Birds perch along the porch railings. The nearby fields sway gently with the breeze. The mansion stands dignified and quiet, save for the occasional groan of settling wood, or the rustle of leaves brushing against the siding. Yet nothing about its daytime appearance prepares visitors for what happens as the sun begins to set. At dusk, the shutters slam loudly, shaking the entire house. The sound begins suddenly, often without any warning. A powerful force sweeps across the structure, causing every crimson shutter to snap shut with a thunderous impact. The bang reverberates through the halls, rattling floorboards and vibrating the old window frames. Even on nights with no wind at all, the shutters move with startling strength, as though driven by an unseen will. The moment is jarring every time, no matter how many times one witnesses it. Visitors describe feeling the vibration travel through their feet and up into their chest, as if the house itself reacts to some invisible signal. The echo lingers long after the shutters have closed, rolling through the interior rooms like distant thunder trapped inside the walls. Some guests insist that the slamming feels intentional, almost ceremonial, as though marking the arrival of something that awakens with the setting sun. The grounds surrounding Red Hall add to its haunted reputation. The gardens, once meticulously maintained, now lie overgrown with wild ivy, tall grass, and tangled hedges. Stone pathways still cut through the brush, though much of their pattern has been overtaken by nature. At night, the gardens become a maze of shadows. The moonlight casts pale silver across the tall grass, illuminating patches of forgotten flower beds and moss-covered statues. Moss-covered statues stand like silent guardians. The moonlight casts a pale, eerie glow over the gardens. The atmosphere is one of foreboding and unease. The gardens are a testament to the transience of human endeavor. The darkness seems to pulse with an otherworldly energy. It is within these gardens that ghostly figures wander, wearing old colonial coats. These figures are seen most often near the overgrown hedges. Or along the stone paths once used by the Estetia's earliest inhabitants. Their coats, though faded in appearance, resemble the style worn centuries ago, complete with long tails and broad collars. The figures walk with slow, deliberate steps, their silhouettes drifting in and out of the moonlit areas as though following the patterns of their old routines. Witnesses say the figures never speak. They make no sound as they move. Some appear to examine the grounds, bending slightly as if tending to a long-forgotten task. Others simply wander, their faces indistinct, their forms faint and pale like mist shaped into human outline. The figures do not seem aggressive or aware of those who see them. Instead, they behave as though repeating memories from a time long gone, trapped within the boundaries of the garden they once cared for. The connection between the slamming shutters and the appearance of the wandering figures has sparked many local stories. Some believe the shutters close to signal the moment when the spirits are free to roam the grounds. Others say the sound awakens the mansion's past, stirring echoes that manifest as the pale figures outside. Many agree that the shutters serve as a threshold between the living world and something older, tied to the land, the structure, and the shadows that drift through the gardens. Inside Red Hall, the shifting atmosphere deepens after the shutters slam. The interior becomes cooler, and sounds travel strangely through the hallways. Visitors often report hearing faint footsteps upstairs, even when the upper levels are empty. The house seems to breathe differently at night, settling into a rhythm that feels watchful and aware. The once warm glow of evening becomes muted, and the corners of each room appear darker, as though shadows grow thicker as the night progresses. In certain rooms, drafts of cold air sweep through briefly, carrying the scent of damp earth, as though the garden itself has found a way inside. Lights flicker at unpredictable moments. Doors creak softly, sometimes closing just enough to blur the line between chance and intention. The house remains calm in its own way, steeped in history more than hostility. The phenomena feel tied to memory rather than malice. Lingering echoes of a time when the estate was filled with daily life and constant activity. Historians who have studied Red Hall colonial residence have uncovered fragments of records that provide hints about its early years. They speak of a large household, bustling with servants and workers who lived on the grounds. The crimson shutters were said to be a distinctive signature of the original owner, who believed the color protected the home from misfortune. Some speculate that this belief may have influenced the many legends surrounding the mansion today. Others point to the appearance of colonial figures as a sign that the Estetia's earliest inhabitants left impressions strong enough to echo into the present. Skeptics suggest that the slamming shutters are caused by lingering structural tension or atmospheric pressure changing as temperatures drop at dusk. They argue that light refraction, shadows, and imagination could explain the ghostly figures in the gardens. Yet those who have witnessed the events firsthand often leave unconvinced by scientific explanations. The timing, the force, and the unmistakable silhouettes defy easy dismissal. Visitors who stay overnight describe the experience as immersive and unforgettable. Sitting inside the hall as dusk approaches becomes an exercise in anticipation. The house grows still. The light fades. A quiet tension builds. Then the shutters slam, powerful and absolute, marking the beginning of the mansiona's nightly transformation. Those who venture outside to the gardens afterward carry with them the image of pale figures wandering quietly through the overgrown paths, moving with the weight of history in their steps. Red Hall colonial residence remains a landmark where mystery and memory intertwine. Its crimson shutters, bold against the weathered exterior, draw the eye long before nightfall. Yet it is the sound they make at dusk and the silent figures that roam the gardens afterward that define the house's legacy. The estate stands as a testament to centuries of stories, echoing through its halls and shadowed grounds, waiting for each new visitor to witness its nightly rituals and decide for themselves whether the past ever truly leaves. Broadmeadow Homestead sits in the center of a vast stretch of open land, where tall grasses ripple like waves beneath the shifting sky. The homestead is modest in size, built long ago from sturdy timber and stone, and weathered by years of wind that sweep across the plains. Though its structure remains strong, it holds an air of quiet abandonment, as if the fields themselves have claimed it and now stand watch over every creaking board and faded windowpane. The isolation is striking. With no trees, no neighboring homes, and no hills to obstruct the view, the land stretches outward in all directions, a boundless stage for whatever memories still echo across it. Visitors quickly notice that Broadmeadow Homestead is never truly silent. Even on the calmest days, when the air is still and the grass barely stirs, faint sounds drift across the property. Sometimes they resemble distant voices. Other times they flatten into low vibrations, humming like a muted drum. Most who hear them assume the wind is playing tricks, carrying noises from faraway roads or farms. But those who stay longer, who listen deeply, begin to recognize a pattern that does not belong to wind or wildlife. Visitors hear marching footsteps across the grass. The footsteps often begin at dusk, when the sunlight turns gold and the shadows stretch long across the fields. They emerge faintly at first, a steady cadence that grows more distinct with each moment. The rhythm is unmistakable, too organized and measured to be the steps of wandering animals. It is the sound of many feet moving in unison, each step landing with gentle force upon the earth. The grass shifts visibly in some areas, bowing slightly under unseen weight before rising again once the sound passes. The marching does not follow a single path. It crosses the fields in sweeping arcs, sometimes approaching the homestead, sometimes veering away. Some visitors report feeling vibrations underfoot as the marching draws near, like the faint tremor of people moving together in large numbers. Others describe hearing the distant clatter of equipment, metallic sounds that accompany the footsteps but fade quickly when the march turns away. Those who witness the fields at the precise moment the sun dips below the horizon sometimes see shapes emerging from the shimmering grass. At first, the figures appear translucent, little more than silhouettes blending with the landscape. But as the sky darkens, the shapes become sharper. Some saw figures lining up as if preparing for battle. The figures stand motionless at first. From a distance, they resemble soldiers from a time long gone, though no distinct features can be seen. Their clothing appears simple, their stances disciplined. The rows form with eerie precision, dozens or perhaps hundreds of figures aligning across the field as though waiting for unseen instructions. The sight lasts only moments before the figures fade back into the grass, dissolving with the fading light. Yet the impression they leave behind lingers long after the field returns to emptiness. Inside Broadmeadow Homestead, the atmosphere shifts subtly with each passing hour. The house creaks as though reacting to the unseen activity outside. The windows, though covered in dust, seem to pulse with faint reflections of movement, as if capturing glimpses of something the eye can never fully grasp. Those who spend the night inside report hearing the same marching footsteps outside the walls, growing louder, then quieter, then circling the house before fading into the distance. Some visitors describe waking in the early hours of the morning to hear whispers. The words are never clear, but the tone feels purposeful, almost strategic. A few claim they heard commands shouted faintly from far-off corners of the fields, though they could never determine the direction or the source. The voices vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving only the cool rustle of grass in their wake. One traveler recounted standing on the porch late at night, feeling the boards tremble beneath his feet as the marching passed directly before him. Though he saw nothing in the darkness, the cadence of footsteps was so clear he believed an entire regiment stood only yards away. When the sound finally receded, he stepped off the porch and found the grass pressed down in long, narrow lines, as though something had walked through only moments before. Another visitor witnessed the figures line up at dawn after a sleepless night. The silhouettes appeared sharper than usual, their shapes more defined. For a brief moment, she thought she saw faces among them, pale and solemn. But before she could step closer, the sun rose fully, bathing the fields in bright light. And the figures dissolved as if made from mist. Local legends surrounding Broadmeadow Homestead stretch back generations. Some believe the land was once the site of a great gathering, perhaps a militia or group of settlers preparing to defend their territory. Others claim the fields were once a training ground for an old community that vanished long ago, leaving behind only the sound of their footsteps. There are stories of long marches, endless drills, and a final assembly that was never completed. Whatever occurred on the plains, it seems the echoes remain. The homestead's isolation intensifies the mystery. With no modern development nearby, the fields retain a natural stillness. The open land offers no hiding place for the unexplained. Yet the phenomena persist, as though the memories etched into the soil recreate themselves in cycles that follow the rise and fall of the sun. Despite the haunting qualities, Broadmeadow Homestead has a strange pull. The landscape is beautiful, its wide horizon painted with shifting colors. And the constant motion of tall grasses. One feels a connection to something vast and ancient, something that transcends individual experience. Yet the presence that marches across the fields cannot be ignored. The footsteps grow louder with each passing year. The figures appear more frequently, their outlines sharper, their formations longer. It is as though the land remembers with increasing clarity, bringing its past into the present with deliberate intent. For those who witness it, Broadmeadow Homestead becomes a place where the past walks openly across the grass. The marching footsteps are steady reminders of stories left unfinished. The figures lining up hint at events never fully resolved. And the wide open fields hold both the beauty of nature and the weight of history, merging into a haunting tableau that unfolds with each rising moon. And the echoes of footsteps continue their march, carrying with them the mystery of time, memory, and the unseen presence that moves across Broadmeadow Homestead. Blackridge Colonial House sits alone at the edge of an overgrown field, its weathered frame rising against a backdrop of dense forest and rolling fog. The structure, built from dark timber and stone, carries the austere beauty of early colonial craftsmanship. Its windows are narrow and deep-set, reflecting little more than fragments of sky and shadow. Travelers approaching the house often pause before stepping inside, sensing a quiet heaviness that drifts from the doorway like an unspoken warning. Upon entering, visitors notice something immediately unusual. The interior stays unnaturally dark, even when sunlight pours through the windows. Light seems to fall short inside the rooms, dimming as though absorbed by the walls themselves. Lanterns flicker weakly, their glow unable to reach beyond a modest radius. The darkness does not simply linger. It clings, thick and unwavering, resisting every attempt to dispel it. The corners of each room are the darkest of all. Shadows gather there in shapes too deep to be explained by architecture alone. Even with lanterns shining directly toward them, the far corners remain murky, as if hiding depth beyond what the eye can measure. Some visitors describe the corners as feeling alive, shifting subtly when no one watches. Others admit they avoid looking into them altogether, unsettled by the sense that something waits just beyond the edge of visibility. Blackridge Colonial House contains several rooms on the main floor, each with its own strange relationship to light. The kitchen, once bustling with activity, remains cold and silent. The dining room holds a long wooden table covered in dust. The parlor features old furniture with faded upholstery and shelves lined with worn books. Yet no matter where guests roam, they find the same enveloping dimness, as if the house keeps its secrets wrapped in shadow. The upstairs hallway is even darker. A long narrow passage stretches between bedrooms, its walls lined with portraits faded beyond recognition. Lanterns struggle against the thick air here, their glow casting only faint impressions along the floor. Many travelers report feeling watched as they walk this corridor, though no sound accompanies their steps except the creak of old boards underfoot. Something about the darkness feels heavier here, as though it thickens with each step taken toward the farthest room. Strangely, the house produces few sounds of its own. No wind whistles through cracks. No distant footsteps echo through empty rooms. Instead, the silence holds steady, broken only by the occasional groan of settling wood. This quietness gives visitors the sense that the house listens closely, absorbing every breath and footfall. Yet the most unsettling reports describe what lies within the shadows. Many visitors claim to have seen eyes staring at them from inside the darkness. These eyes appear briefly, blinking or glimmering before vanishing. Some describe them as faint impressions, like reflections catching in unusual places. Others say the eyes glow subtly, not bright enough to illuminate, but visible enough to distinguish their shape. They seem to hover within the darkest corners, just above head level or near the floor, watching silently from the edges of the room. The eyes never appear long enough for anyone to see the figure behind them. Nor do they retreat. They simply observe, remaining still until the moment light comes close. When a lantern approaches, the eyes dissolve instantly into the shadows, leaving behind only a heavy quietness and the memory of what was seen. One traveler described standing in the parlor when he noticed a pair of eyes watching him from a shadowed corner. They blinked once, reflecting a faint reddish tint, before fading into the darkness. He approached with a lantern, but found nothing except a patch of shadow that refused to brighten. Another guest recounted seeing multiple sets of eyes along the upstairs hallway, each appearing for a fraction of a second as she passed. They did not follow her. They simply appeared, one after another, like a row of watchers acknowledging her presence. Some visitors feel a chill when the eyes appear, as though the air shifts around them. Others sense a pressure, subtle but noticeable, like someone standing just behind them. These sensations vanish as quickly as they arrive, leaving guests unsure whether the experience was real or the product of imagination fueled by the house's intense atmosphere. The basement offers a different kind of darkness. The stairs leading down creak sharply, and the air grows significantly colder with each step. The darkness here is absolute, swallowing lantern light completely. Guests who attempt to explore the basement often turn back quickly, overwhelmed by the sensation of being surrounded by unseen presences. Some describe feeling the hairs on their arms lift, as though static electricity fills the air. Others hear faint whispers, though they dissolve into silence the moment anyone tries to listen closely. The history of Blackridge Colonial House remains fragmented. Old records suggest it once belonged to a family known for their strict traditions and secluded lifestyle. They rarely interacted with the surrounding settlement, preferring their solitude. Rumors describe strange rituals conducted within the home, though nothing has been confirmed. What is known is that the family eventually left under mysterious circumstances, abandoning the house without explanation. Since then, the structure has stood untouched, preserved only by its sturdy construction and the curiosity of those who dare to enter. Modern visitors come seeking to experience the house's unique atmosphere. Some hope to understand the unnatural darkness that fills every room. Others seek the truth behind the watchful eyes. Photographs taken inside often show distortions near the corners, warped shadows, or blurred shapes that resemble faces. Audio recordings capture brief static or faint clicks that occur only when the recorder points toward the darkest parts of a room. Despite these unusual happenings, the house never feels overtly hostile. Its atmosphere carries a quiet tension, as though something ancient lingers within, observing rather than acting. The shadows do not lash out. The eyes do not chase or threaten. They simply watch, patient and silent, as though guarding the interior from unwanted intrusion. Visitors leave with memories that stay with them long after their departure. They recall stepping into a darkness that felt too deliberate. Standing in rooms where the corners seemed alive. And seeing eyes that vanished before their meaning could be understood. Blackridge Colonial House remains a place where the boundary between light and shadow feels thinner than anywhere else. A structure where the darkness itself seems aware, holding tightly to whatever dwells within it. Those who enter does not seek to frighten, but to observe. Where shadows cling with purpose. Where eyes reflect silently through the dimness. And where the darkness endures long after the last lantern flame fades. Hollowstep Manor stands at the edge of a quiet countryside, its silhouette framed by tall pines and wide fields that stretch far beyond the horizon. The manor's architecture reflects an older era, built with dark timber beams and wide wooden floors that creak beneath the faintest pressure. Sunlight warms its outer walls during the day, revealing patterns of aging wood and worn stone. At first glance, the house appears peaceful, a relic from a time when craftsmanship shaped every corner. Yet those who spend time within its walls soon discover that Hollowstep Manor lives up to its name. From the moment visitors enter, the wooden floors greet them with hollow thuds. The sound does not resemble the typical creak of aging beams. Instead, each step echoes with a depth that seems to come from beneath the boards. The thuds resonate through the rooms and hallways, creating the impression that the floorboards hover above an unseen space rather than resting firmly on a foundation. The sound travels differently depending on where one stands, shifting in tone as though something moves beneath the surface. In the daytime, the echoes can be dismissed as structural quirks. The house is old, after all, and wood expands and contracts with temperature changes. Visitors reassure themselves with these explanations as they walk carefully across the floors, feeling the vibrations rise faintly through their shoes. Yet even during daylight hours, the hollowness persists. Some compare the sound to walking over an empty stage. Others say it feels as though the boards form a barrier between the living space above and an unsettling void below. When night arrives, Hollowstep Manor grows even more atmospheric. Darkness settles across the grounds and the wind drifts quietly around the exterior, brushing against the timber like a gentle warning. Inside, the hollow thuds become clearer, ringing out in slow, rhythmic patterns. These sounds often come from rooms where no one is walking. Guests sitting in the parlor have reported hearing footsteps in the hallway, only to find the corridor empty upon investigation. The pattern of the thud suggests walking, steady and deliberate, with pauses as though someone stops, listens, and then continues moving. Some visitors claim the footsteps occasionally travel directly beneath them. They hear the hollow thuds pass under their feet, moving from one end of the room to the other with careful precision. The steps feel uncomfortably close, separated only by the thickness of the wooden planks. The sound lingers in the air, creating a tension that grows stronger with each passing moment. Even those who consider themselves rational find it difficult to ignore these phantom footsteps. In the deepest hours of night, another phenomenon emerges. Knocking sounds rise from under the house, echoing softly through the foundation. The knocks are not loud or forceful, but they carry a clarity that distinguishes them from typical structural noise. They come in patterns, sometimes 3 quick taps, other times a slow and deliberate sequence. Those who have heard them describe the knocks as precise, too intentional to dismiss as settling wood or shifting earth. The sound drifts upward, traveling through the floorboards and into the quiet rooms above. Guests staying overnight often report waking at the sound of these knocks. Some recall hearing them directly beneath their bed, their eyes opening to the darkness as the soft tapping continues. Others have heard the knocking beneath the hallway stairs, or near the parlor floor, always rising from somewhere below. These experiences leave visitors uneasy, unable to return to sleep for fear the sound might begin again. The cellar provides little comfort. The entrance sits at the back of the house, a narrow door leading to steep steps that descend into darkness. The cellar ceiling is low and crowded with support beams, yet the space beneath the main floor remains surprisingly deep. Lantern light reveals stone walls and dirt floors, with wooden posts propping up the structure above. The space seems untouched by whatever causes the footsteps and knocking. The cellar shows no signs of damage or loose panels that might explain the hollow echoes upstairs. Local history provides clues but no definitive answers. Hollow Step Manor was built on land once used by early settlers, though records of their activities remain scarce. Some stories suggest the settlers dug temporary shelters beneath the ground before constructing permanent homes. Others hint at underground storage spaces long since filled in or forgotten. These accounts were often dismissed as figments of imagination, symptoms of living in an old house with natural quirks. Yet the consistency of the reports over generations creates a lingering sense of mystery. Each new occupant experiences similar sounds, similar patterns, similar moments of quiet unease. The hollow thuds continue night after night, always following the same pacing rhythm. The knocking persists in subtle patterns, too measured to ignore. No one has uncovered any hidden space beneath the floors, and it offers no explanation. The cellar remains the only known area below the floors. And it offers no explanation. Visitors who remain at Hollow Step. They learn to differentiate between the natural creaks of the house and the hollow footsteps that echo with uncanny consistency. They grow accustomed to the idea of something unseen moving beneath the boards, pacing through the house as though following an old routine. Rather than fearing the presence, many describe it as curious or restless. Not threatening but undeniably aware of the world above. Near dawn, the sounds typically fade. The footsteps grow faint before disappearing entirely, as though the unseen walker retreats deeper below the floors. The knocking stops abruptly, leaving only silence and the soft hum of morning wind. The manor feels remarkably still during these early hours, as if exhausted by the activity of the night. Daylight brings warmth and clarity, restoring the house to its peaceful daytime form. Yet for those who experience the hollow echoes and knocking, the memory remains vivid. Hollow Step Manor leaves a lasting impression, not through fear but through the persistent sense that something beneath the floors continues a quiet, rhythmic journey through the shadows. Whether explained by forgotten structures, shifting earth, or something far more elusive, the menorah's nightly sounds shape its identity, creating an atmosphere filled with curiosity, tension, and a sense of connection to something hidden within the wooden bones of the house. In a secluded stretch of countryside, where rolling fields gradually drop into a hidden depression of land, stands an imposing structure known as Silent Vale Residence. The mansion rises above the landscape with its tall chimneys, weathered stone walls, and sharply angled rooflines that catch the light of early morning and late afternoon. Its windows gleam with a muted glow, reflecting the surrounding hills in soft, distorted shapes. Though the residence appears peaceful at first glance, its true character reveals itself through the unusual geography directly behind it. A valley behind the mansion traps sound. The land slopes sharply downward into a deep, bowl-shaped formation, lined with dense trees and brush. During the day, the valley seems still, absorbing the sounds of wind, wildlife, and distant activity into a quiet hush. Visitors who step near its edge often remark that their voices vanish into the open space as though swallowed by an unseen force. Even loud noises echo only faintly, dissolving before they reach the bottom. The valley behaves like a natural chamber of silence, creating an eerie contrast with the vibrant life that exists just outside its boundaries. As evening approaches, the atmosphere around the valley changes. The air cools rapidly, and mist gathers near the tree line, drifting slowly upward in thin spirals. Shadows deepen along the slopes, merging into one another until the valley floor becomes a darkened void. Whispers drift up from below. The sounds rise through the valley in soft, wavering currents that shimmer through the still air. It is during these hours that the first signs of the mansiona's enduring mystery begin to emerge. The whispers are faint enough to be mistaken for the rustling of leaves or the distant trickle of water, yet they follow no natural rhythm. Visitors describe the whispers as layered, as though multiple voices originate from different depths of the valley. Some voices seem close, drifting just beneath the edge of hearing. Others rise from far below, stretching upward through the darkness. The cadence suggests communication, as though the valley carries fragments of conversation from unseen sources. Many listeners report feeling uneasy when the whispers grow stronger, especially on calm nights when no wind or wildlife can account for the sound. The back porch of Silent Vale residence overlooks this mysterious valley. The porch extends across the rear of the mansion, built from old timber that creaks softly beneath each step. From this vantage point, visitors have a clear view of the valley's edge, the steep descent into shadow, and the forest beyond. But at dusk, when the whispers rise, the atmosphere shifts dramatically. Visitors standing on the back porch often feel a presence behind them. The sensation arrives subtly at first, a slight pressure or shift in the air, as though someone has stepped quietly into the space beside them. Some feel the hair on their arms or the back of their neck lift in response. Others describe sensing a figure standing just outside their peripheral vision, lingering close enough to notice but never close enough to see. When they turn around, the porch remains empty, the wooden railings and old lanterns casting long shadows across the floor. This presence does not seem aggressive, but its nearness is unmistakable. Many visitors report the feeling growing stronger as the whispers rise from the valley. It is as though the unseen entity is drawn to the sound or responds to the valley's shifting energy. Occasionally, guests feel a slight brush against their shoulder or the faintest shift of air behind them, mimicking the subtle movement of someone stepping closer. These moments create a powerful mixture of curiosity and unease, compelling visitors to look repeatedly behind them even when nothing appears. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere mirrors the tension felt on the porch. The back rooms, especially those with windows facing the valley, often feel cooler than the rest of the house. Curtains flutter subtly without a breeze, and old wooden floorboards creak as though stepped upon. At times, faint sounds echo through the halls, not loud enough to identify but present enough to suggest subtle movement somewhere inside the residence. Though these occurrences could be attributed to the building's age, the timing often aligns with the rising whispers from the valley. Local stories add further depth to the mystery of Silent Vale residence. According to older generations, the valley was once a gathering place for early settlers, who used the natural acoustics for rituals and meetings. Some legends claim the land beneath the valley contains caverns or fissures that create unusual echoes. Others speak of events long forgotten, suggesting that something buried deep within the valley fuels the strange whispers heard today. None of the stories provide definitive answers, yet each contributes to the mansiona's enduring reputation. Researchers who study acoustic anomalies have visited the estate in an attempt to explain the sound trapping effect of the valley. They note that the unique curvature of the land could contribute to unusual reverberations or amplifications of distant noises. Some propose that underground water channels or caverns might create natural sound conduits. However, these theories fail to account for the whispers that appear exclusively at dusk and rise from the depths with no identifiable source. The presence felt on the porch remains equally unexplained, adding yet another layer to the mystery. Visitors who spend extended time at Silent Vale residence describe a progression in their experiences. On the first night, the whispers seem faint and distant, easily dismissed as natural sounds. By the second or third night, the voices grow clearer, forming patterns that appear almost intentional. The presence on the porch becomes more defined, lingering closer, almost brushing against the listener's awareness. Some visitors choose to leave early, unable to tolerate the escalating tension. Others remain, captivated by the profound strangeness of the place. As dawn breaks, the valley releases its grip on the whispers. The sounds fade with the rising sun, dissolving into the morning air. The presence that lingered on the porch retreats as well, leaving only the quiet creaks of the mansion settling into daytime stillness. The valley becomes peaceful once again, its depth filled with soft light and drifting mist. Silent Vale residence stands as a testament to the mysteries woven into the natural world. Its valley, with its whispering depths and sound-trapping embrace, shapes the atmosphere of the entire property. Visitors come seeking answers, yet most leave with more questions than they began with. They remember the quiet chill on the back porch, the sensation of someone just behind them, and the soft voices rising from a valley that seems to hold memories far older than the mansion itself. The residence remains a place where the boundaries between environment, memory, and the unseen blur together. It invites exploration yet warns with subtle signs. It draws listeners to the edge of its valley, offering whispers that drift upward like secrets carried on the air. And for those who stand on the back porch at dusk, it provides an unforgettable experience, one that resonates long after they step away from the quiet depths of Silent Vale. Ghost Pine Colonial Mansion stands deep within an ancient grove where tall pines rise like towering sentinels around the property. Their trunks stretch high into the sky, forming a natural fortress of shadow and stillness. The air beneath their branches feels heavier, quieter, as though the forest itself holds its breath in the mansiona's presence. The house is a grand structure from another era, built with sweeping verandas, tall windows, and weathered bricks softened by decades of wind and rain. Yet for all its elegance, the mansion carries an atmosphere that is unmistakably unsettling. The building's FAA section A seems to observe every visitor who approaches, its dark windows gazing down with silent awareness. The pines shift gently in the breeze, but the mansion never appears to move. It stands fixed in time, wrapped in a strange combination of beauty and decay. Locals consider it the most haunted residence in the region, a place where the past refuses to release its hold. The stories surrounding it are numerous, and each is more unsettling than the last. From the moment guests step inside, they feel the charge of something unseen. The foyer opens into wide corridors lined with portraits whose subjects seem to track each movement. Dust collects along hand-carved railings, and the air carries a faint scent of old paper and pine resin. But the mansion's eeriness does not lie solely in its silence or age. It lies in the lights that flicker throughout the house. Glowing rooms light up without reason. Visitors often report passing a dark hallway only to see a room suddenly illuminated behind them, casting a warm amber glow against the floor. When they peer inside, the room appears empty, untouched, as though no living person has entered for decades. The light stays steady for a moment, then dims, then returns in strange pulses that travel from one room to the next. Some guests describe seeing entire sections of the mansion flicker to life at once, creating the impression of a bustling household frozen in some forgotten moment. Yet no electricity runs through the mansiona's old wiring. The power was shut off years ago, and no modern fixtures remain. The only explanation visitors can offer is that the lights manifest from some unseen source, glowing with an energy that feels both familiar and foreign. Visitors wake to the feeling of someone sitting at the foot of their bed. The sensation arrives in the early hours of the morning when the mansion is at its quietest. Sleepers feel the mattress sink slightly under added weight, as though someone has gently taken a seat. The pressure remains for several seconds, unmoving, until the sensation fades as quietly as it appeared. Some describe hearing faint breathing near their legs, a slow and steady rhythm that does not match their own. Others awaken with the certainty that eyes are watching them in the dark, though no form is visible when they look. One guest reported feeling a cold hand brush her ankle just before the weight on the mattress lifted. Another described sensing the presence of someone leaning forward, as if observing or listening to his sleeping breath. These encounters often leave visitors shaken, unable to return to sleep. The mansion feels more alive during these moments, as though its walls conceal countless unseen footsteps moving through the night. Yet none of these experiences compare to the most famous sight associated with Ghost Pine Colonial Mansion. Some visitors see a full apparition wandering the halls, carrying a lantern that casts no shadow. The figure appears in various parts of the mansion but most often in the long central corridor where moonlight filters through tall windows. Witnesses describe the apparition as tall and slender, clothed in old-fashioned garments that flow like soft fabric caught in an invisible breeze. The lantern held in its hand glows brightly, illuminating the surrounding walls with warm, steady light. Yet the figure itself casts no shadow, even as the lantern's glow spreads across the floor. This lack of shadow is the detail that many visitors mention first, for it is the clearest sign that the figure is not a living presence. The apparition moves with calm purpose, gliding rather than walking, covering the hall without sound. Some say the figure pauses at certain doorways, lifting the lantern slightly as though checking each room. Others claim it walks straight through closed doors, the lanterna-esque glow passing into the wood without resistance. The figure never speaks. It never reacts to the presence of visitors. It remains wholly focused on its silent, nightly routine. Several explorers have attempted to follow the apparition. None have ever caught up. Each time they turn a corner or quicken their pace, the figure remains just ahead, its lantern swaying gently. The farther they follow, the dimmer the glow becomes. Until it disappears entirely, leaving only the darkness of the hall behind. Within the mansion, the presence of the lantern apparition influences the entire atmosphere. The air grows colder in its wake. Dust motes swirl in strangely ordered patterns when it passes. And certain doors have been known to open moments before the figure appears, as though the house anticipates its arrival. Local legends tell of a former caretaker who once lived in the mansion. A man devoted to maintaining the estate long after its owners passed away. Some believe the apparition is his lingering presence, continuing his nightly checks of the property. Others suggest the figure predates the mansion itself, connected instead to the surrounding pines, which have stood for centuries. The lantern, they say, is a symbol of guidance, a light meant to lead wandering spirits home. Whether true or not, the mansiona's activity persists. Lights continue to glow in empty rooms. Guests continue to wake to the feeling of someone sitting at the foot of their bed. And the lantern-bearing apparition continues to walk the halls, carrying its silent illumination through a home filled with stories that time has not erased. Ghost Pine Colonial Mansion remains a place where the past breathes through the present. The walls hold memories that flicker to life each night. And the lantern light drifts through the darkness, guiding unseen footsteps along familiar paths. For those who dare to enter, the mansion offers an experience that is haunting, beautiful, and unforgettable. A place where shadows behave strangely, where rooms glow without cause, and where an apparition walks softly through endless halls, carrying a lantern whose light belongs to no earthly flame. Thank you, my dear friend, for journeying with me tonight through the haunted colonial mansions of Connecticut. Each home carries centuries of memories. Some beautiful. Some tragic. And some that linger in the air like cold breath. If you ever walk past one of these old mansions in the quiet evening light, and the curtains shift, or a lantern flickers, or a shadow moves behind the glass, remember this. Not every resident of these colonial homes has moved on. Some still wander the halls. Some still watch from the windows. And some still wait for visitors to step inside. Until our next. Rest well. Stay safe. And may the night bring you only gentle dreams.